What's up, everybody? I just unmuted myself, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me in just a second. And just waiting for everyone to join in on the class here. So I'm going to be just checking everyone off as I see your names appear. But in the meantime, while we're waiting for class to get started, make sure you've got, your favorite drink on hand there, some liquid inspiration, as we call it. And make sure you got some of your favorite snacks if you want them. I will not have any music playing in the background so you can hear me really good. So definitely don't be afraid to have your favorite jams playing on in the background so you can shake it while you make it, all right? Otherwise, like I said, we'll get started in just a little bit. I'm just going to be checking people in, kind of grabbing supplies, walking back and forth, and that kind of thing. So we'll get started right at 6. So in about 5 to 6 minutes, we'll get this party started. Otherwise, welcome, everyone. It's good to see y'all. Oh, and just so you know, I cannot hear anybody's audio, but I have a chat I'll be opening up here. So you can talk to me anytime you want in the chat. I'd love any comments as we're going, any feedback and that kind of thing. I'll go ahead and get that chat open. All right. And the chat's awesome. If you have any questions or anything like that, I can help you out throughout the painting tonight. So we'll have a good time. Awesome. Just going through my little checklist here. Hey, Peggy. Who else we got? We've got Sherry. Gotcha, Sherry. Let's see. All right. Christy. Hello. Welcome, Christy. I'll check you out. Is that your friend?
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah.
Hi. Hi, Katie.
Check them off. Oh, hey. Do you know?
They're signed up on liquid. I'm not going to have them all. I would just let them all in.
That one too, or not? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right. Cool, cool. We got a big class tonight. I'm excited. Welcome, Christopher. Welcome. Got you checked in. Welcome, Ingrid.
Hi.
All right. If you're just getting here, we're just checking everyone in right now. And then once everyone is checked in, then we'll get this party started. If you are just now checking in to our class here, just a little reminder again, make sure you've got all your supplies ready. We'll go over those in just a little bit. And also, if you want some liquid inspiration, as we call it, have your favorite little drink there ready for you. Have some snacks. I won't have any music playing in the background, so I highly encourage you to have a little painting party music in the background. Put your favorite jams on, so you can shake it while you make it. But we'll get started in just a little bit. Just a little bit. And if you have any questions before we get going here or anytime, I've got a little chat open up on the side here. So leave me questions anytime. Because again, I won't be able to hear you, but you'll be able to hear me. All right. I'm going to mute my mic for just a second. I'll be right back. Awesome. Just checking everyone right now. Hello, if you're just arriving, what's up? Welcome to the party. We'll be getting started in, it looks like just a couple minutes. We'll start right at 6 o'clock. So again, if you already heard me, sorry, but just a little reminder, make sure you got your favorite snacks or drinks on hand there. And I will not have any music playing, so definitely get some music going in the background there if you want to have a little painting party music while we get lost in that smushing process tonight. And we'll get started in just a little bit. Just waiting for everyone to log in to the class. All right. Sweet. All right, y'all, we'll get started in about 1 more minute here. Just waiting for everyone to arrive. And then we'll get this painting party started. I'm so excited y'all are here to paint with me tonight. And again, while we're getting all set up, make sure you got your favorite beverage or snack. We call it liquid inspiration, if you know what I'm talking about. I know some of you do. And oh, if you've ever painted with me before, welcome back. It's good to see you. Leave me a little comment if you've ever painted with me before. Awesome. And some of you I'll be able to see your videos. Some of you I won't, depending on if you enabled your video or not there. Either way is totally cool. And I do have to kind of scroll to see everyone's video, but it's kind of nice because if you ever have questions at any point in time, you can hold up your canvas and then I can scroll to your video there and I can help you with any questions as we go. So, all right. All right, so I'll be right back and then we're going to get this party started. Sweet. Yeah, sure. All right. Well, I see a few more painters have arrived. Let me check you off real quick and then we'll get going. All right, so I'm gonna scooch you over here a little bit. All right, looks like the gang's here. It's officially time to get this painting party started. So welcome everyone to Painting with a Twist tonight. Our Painting with a Twist at Home virtual class. I'm very excited about this, and I'm excited y'all are here to paint with me tonight. We're gonna have a good time just smushing that paint around. And just FYI, that's all you're doing tonight, all right? We're just gonna smush that paint. We're gonna smush it real good. And then we'll just see what happens, all right? So my name is Tyler. They also like to call me the Paint Doctor. The reason they gave me that sweet nickname is because I can help you fix anything, all right? So no worries tonight. If you ever have a little uh-oh moment, a little happy accident, who knows, you know, maybe you're just working away and then your allergies kick in. You're like, achoo, oh no. Whatever it is, you just leave me a little comment in the chat and then I can answer any question for you. And you can, like I said, hold up your painting even to the screen there so I can see what you're talking about and I can help you fix anything. So I will not leave you hanging tonight, but again, welcome to Painting with a Twist. We are the East Colorado Springs studio, so you can find us off of North Powers and Constitution. And if you ever need more paint supplies, we have got you, all right? So do check out our take-it-home kits. If you need brushes, paints, all those goodies, a surface to paint on, all kinds of things there, we can get you hooked up for that. Especially for our virtual classes if you're needing supplies, because we're going to be doing more of these, then we've got those supplies for you. Oh yeah, what paint colors do we need? Perfect. We're going to start getting into those supplies to make sure we're all ready here. That way, if you need to, you can run and grab something real quick. So let's go over those supplies real quick before I get too ahead of myself. First off, let's make sure we've all got a cup of paint water. Any cup will do. I use pickle jars at home to recycle them. Just make sure you don't accidentally drink your paint water tonight. You'd be surprised, but I've actually seen it happen a lot. So watch what you are drinking, okay? And if you have wine tonight, maybe put that on the opposite side of the table of where your beverage is there. Oh, yes, and we're also doing virtual classes. This is also through the Lakewood studio in Denver. So do check out our Lakewood studio in Denver, too, if you signed up through us there. So we're representing both studios, so we're having a good time here. So again, make sure you got a cup of paint water. Do not mistake that for your beverage tonight. If you drink paint water, don't panic. Most acrylics are non-toxic, so you will be all right, okay? I just don't recommend it. It will taste bad, and it's not fermented. So no benefits there. All right, then let's talk about our tools tonight. We'll definitely need a paper towel or just a paint rag. If you're recycling stuff at home, a lot of times I will just, rip up a t-shirt, an old, towel, and you can reuse that over and over, which is nice. But paper towels work great. Something to clean your brush on. And then we will want 2 to 3 brushes tonight. You could get away with just 2 brushes, but I'll show you a couple options for you. First off, we want to use a big brush. This one's a big flat brush here. He's about 1 inch. Or she's about 1 inch. And we like to name our brushes, all right? So I will be naming them. It's more fun that way. You can call your brush whatever you want to call it. But tonight, I will be calling the big brush Big Mama. Say, what's up, girl? She's going to be working it hard for us tonight. On top of our big brush, you'll want a medium brush. And you've got 2 options here. Either will work fantastic, honestly. So you can either get a medium flat brush, works great, or a medium round brush. Either one's fine, but some kind of medium brush. We'll call our medium brush Slim Jim or Slim Shady. Say, what's poppin', Slim? What's poppin'? And then finally, you will want a little brush for details tonight. So just like a little round brush, something about like that. And this little guy, I like to call this one Little Mama. Say, hey, Little Mama. So that's what we'll call our brushes tonight. It's more fun that way instead of saying like 1 inch flat brush, So let's go ahead and take your brushes, hold them proudly. I want you to take all of those brushes and we want to drop them in that cup of paint water. This is where you want to keep them when you're not using them. If you leave the brushes on the table, you're going to have a very sad, dry, crusty, dead fish. You don't want that. So think of those brushes as happy little fish and let them hang out under the sea when you're done with them. And then they'll be very happy. And then we should also have our paint palettes. So let's talk about those colors. And to be honest, you can get away with using less colors than you actually need here. So I will kind of show you different ways we can mix those colors. And here, I'll go ahead and put up a little example one here. Just to have in the background. So let's look at those colors here. Here's what my palette looks like. So you can see I've got a good amount. You don't have to have this many colors. And some of these colors, I can show you how to get them without having all of them pre-mixed there. There's a lot of ways to make these colors. So the main colors you need, black and white. Those are always the base there because we use that for just about everything. So have black, have white. Those are the main 2. Besides that, you can get away with having a lot less. I have a red is a good color to have there with some blue. It doesn't have to be the same shade of blue or the same shade of red as me. If you got a red and blue, we can make purple with that. Or maybe you already have a pre-mixed purple. That's great. You can just use the purple. You don't have to have red and blue because I'm just going to be using those to make purple. The yellows here, my paint's moving on that plate there. My yellows, I've got a bright yellow and I've got what it's called raw sienna, but I call it peanut butter or Dijon mustard, That's what it looks like to me. It's kind of a sandy golden tan color there. So if you don't have that raw sienna peanut butter color, there's an easy way to make that color. And I'll get into that in a little bit, but you could mix You could make a brown by mixing purple and yellow, and then you can add more yellow and white to make a very light brown color. You could also make like a very pale orange, kind of like a yellowy orange there, and that would work as well, where you use yellow and a tiny bit of red and a little white there, and it'll kind of give you this golden yellow. So that's really all we're looking for, is a kind of a goldeny, warmer yellow. So we can get away with a little less if you don't have all those colors. But that's what I'm gonna be working with. And like I said, when we get into the color mixing there, I can always show you how to make it with what you've got on hand. So that's kind of cool. Really, you can make just about any color you need with yellow, red, and blue. So that's kind of nice. And then besides that, let's see, we've got our paper towel, we've got our brushes, our paint cup. Oh, we'll need our surface to paint on. You do not have to paint on canvas. You can paint on whatever you want. You can paint on rocks. You can paint on cardboard, thick pieces of paper, a wine glass, whatever you got on hand, all right? So when you do these virtual classes, keep that in mind. You can get really creative with the surface you want to paint on. So we'll have fun with that. I'll be painting on a 16 by 20 canvas tonight. But like I said, paint on whatever you like. And then make sure you got some painting clothes, you know, something you don't mind getting a little paint on. If you're wearing a brand new outfit and you get a little paint on your outfit, well, guess what? You just got a brand new painting outfit. So if you don't want that, just wear something you don't mind getting a little paint splatter on there, and you're good to go. Just an old t-shirt or something. And I think that's about it. Any questions on the supplies before we get this painting party started? All right. Leave me a little comment there if you have any questions. I'm checking out the chat there. Awesome. And finally, like I said, this is a painting party, so I need you to keep that at the forefront of your mind tonight, you know? That's why we say painting with a twist. This is fun arts, not fine art, all right? So let that phrase simmer on your brain. It's all about having a good time, getting lost in the smushing process. So as a little reminder, this is something really fun we like to do in our classes here. As a little reminder, anytime I feel like it, it might just be really random, or maybe like after we complete a step as like a bit of congratulations to yourself there. I like to ring my little party bell as a reminder, we're just here to have a good time. And you know my bell's here to party. Why is that? There's a unicorn on top. So when you hear this little bell, if you want to get a little weird and rowdy at home, give me a little burst of energy. Just be like, woohoo, cheers. My personal favorite is caw-caw. So be as weird as you want. No judgment here, all right? Plus you're at home, so you can get even weirder, okay? So we'll have fun with that. That's what the bell's all about. Just a reminder, we're just here to have fun. All right, y'all. And again, my name is Tyler. They also call me the Paint Doctor. Sometimes they call me Man Bun. You know, whatever works. So if you need help or you have questions, please don't be afraid to ask. As a little reminder, I cannot hear any of you. I can see your video screens. But if you leave me little comments in the chat, I will be checking that after each step and helping you out as we go. And that's the cool thing. You don't have to know anything about painting because I'm going to be walking you through it step by step tonight. So that should give you a bit of relief. So before we get started here, let's all take a deep breath together. Let it out slow. We want to get into the zen of painting, all right? And before we start painting, it's good to be a little loose. You don't want to be, you know, it's like when we use pens, pencils, and tablets, you put a lot of pressure down. Painting is the polar opposite. You want to be relaxed. So spin those wrists for me. Wake them up a little bit. Get them a little loosey-goosey tonight. Give them a little shake. Or do your best wacky inflatable arm tube man impersonation. Whatever gets you loose, all right? That's the motion of the ocean. That's how you want to paint tonight, okay? And then it's polite to introduce yourself. So whatever you're painting on tonight, touch it and say hello. Say, I'm going to make you beautiful. I promise. Or you just say, I'm going to paint your face. Either way. I wanted you to notice the texture of your surface. These do act a lot like dry sponges. So if you've never painted before, make sure you use plenty of paint on the brush. The more you use, the easier it's going to mix, blend, and all that good stuff. So the golden rule of painting, if you're new to this, is mo paint, mo better, all right? So don't forget that rule. All right, let's go ahead and start off with our big brush tonight. Let's get our big brush, Big Mama. That's what I'm calling it. Say, hey, girl. Tap it off on the side of the cup, give it a little tap there, and then give it a little tap on your paper towel. It's okay if your brush is a little wet. We just don't want water, you know, dripping off of that brush. So a little moisture is good, though. All right, y'all. So we're going to be starting off. Let me get the example here and show you. we're gonna start off with the background. Painting is a layering process. So we kind of work from the background forward. And so we'll be layering these purples and they're gonna fade into these the yellows are gonna fade into these nice little purples down here. So we're gonna start at the lightest and work our way into those darker colors. So let's go ahead and talk about this. We wanna make a very light, kind of a goldeny yellow there. So if you, one more supplies thing I almost forgot to mention there. I always have an extra mixing plate, or you can just use what I call a tester plate, like a piece of paper is fine. You can even just rip off a piece of cardboard from a box if you need to and use that as a tester sheet. But it's good to have a little place where you can mix colors. On top of mixing colors, you might want a little place to test out brush strokes and just kind of practice things. It's always nice to have a little practice space before you start painting on the actual surface that you're working with. So don't be afraid to have a little scratch paper, cardboard, or just an extra paper plate there for your mixing and all that good stuff. So what I'm gonna do to start here, I'm gonna dunk my whole brush in a healthy amount of white. Let's get a bunch of white on there, glob it on. Look at my brush, nice and saucy. You better make that brush saucy. If you have any bristles showing, that's too many bristles. And then I'm gonna take a corner of my brush, I'm gonna dunk it in the peanut butter yellow, and then I'm gonna dunk it in the bright yellow. So here's what my brush looks like. It's got white.
Hi, everyone.
Say bye to Starla.
Enjoy the paint, doctor.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Will you lock the front on your room? Oh, perfect, thank you. So again, we got white on the whole brush, lots of mayo. We've got a little bit of the bright yellow mustard and a little bit of the peanut butter or Dijon mustard on the corner there. So that's what my brush looks like. And then just to make sure the colors are right there, let's go to our extra little plate here and just kind of tap and roll your brush a little bit. Tap and roll it, make sure it makes kind of a goldeny, light, fairly pale yellow there. See if I can hold mine up so you can see a little better. Let's do a little of that. All right, and then let's say you don't have that peanut butter tan color. If you want to make something similar without it, you got a couple options here. You can grab a big scoop of yellow, drop that on your extra plate. You could put a little bit of red in it, stir that up, and you'd want to make what I'd call like nacho cheese yellow. It's very yellow, with just a hint of orange in it, just a hint of orange. So it's a very nacho cheesy yellow. And this is another good way to get that golden yellow color if you don't have that peanut butter raw sienna. Third option, you could mix purple, red and blue, and you could add yellow to that purple and white, and you get that brown color, and that would work as well. So there's lots of ways to mix those colors. So if you have questions on the color mixing, let me know. Otherwise, again, white on your whole brush, peanut butter, and the bright yellow there. Nice and saucy, glob it on, lightly mix it on your plate there, lightly mix it. And then what we're gonna do here, so I've lightly mixed those, it's making this golden yellow, and just kind of barely mix it. Lots of white, good scoop of peanut butter, good scoop of bright yellow. Once you've got your color on your brush there, here I'll show you mine again, so you can see that up close on my brush. So it's kind of a tan, goldeny yellow there. What we'll do, this very first step, very technical here, okay? Okay, you want to aim for the top of the canvas, aim for the top, and do this. Hi-ya! Just slap it on there. And then once you've got a little blob up top, we are just going to take this color down to about the middle of the canvas there. So just glob it on that brush and smooth it out. Lots of paint. You got to have a lot of paint on the brush for this. Remember when I said make that brush saucy, nice and saucy. Mo paint, mo better. It should feel when you're painting like that paint is melting on that canvas. It should feel like butter on hot toast or cream cheese on a bagel, all right? So use your paint like Paula Deen uses butter, if you know what I'm talking about. I think you do. So keep loading it up, lots of white, a little bit of peanut butter and bright yellow, and we'll work our way down to the middle of the canvas there. And it can be a little brighter than mine, it can be a little darker than mine. That's okay. If it's brighter than you want, add more white. If it's not dark enough, add more of your yellows. And you can go a little darker, but overall, it should be a fairly light, kind of a golden pale yellow. And remember, we're gonna go to about the middle of our surface. So wherever you're painting, whatever you're painting on tonight, we just wanna work those brush strokes back and forth until we get to about the middle of the canvas there. So nice, big, healthy brush strokes. You got to make Big Mama work. Remember, that's the big brush. We're making her work tonight. Nice, big, healthy brush strokes. Don't be afraid to reload that brush. You should never, ever have to press down very hard with your brush. If you have to press down hard, you need more paint on that brush. That's why it's so relaxing and the opposite of using pens and pencils and tablets, you know? So your brush kind of tells you if you've got the right amount of paint on there based off of that. Or sometimes you're brushing and you'll notice little white dots appear in your brush strokes. It's kind of the texture of the canvas pulling through there. And it's just the canvas telling you a little message. He's saying, I'm a thirsty canvas, all right? That's why you gotta load that brush up. Nice and saucy. Mo paint, mo better. Can never emphasize that enough. Paint blends much better while it is wet. And we're gonna be blending into this background color, so we need that paint pretty wet for that. Again, as we're going tonight, if you have any questions, please leave them for me in the chat. I'm happy to help you out with anything you got as we go here. Paint Doctor will not leave you hanging. Otherwise, we're just gonna let it flow, let it go tonight. We're gonna get lost in those brush strokes. That's what it's all about. It's very relaxing. I've had a lot of people compare painting to meditation because you really do forget about everything going on in that brain because you're so focused on smushing that paint. So really it's very relaxing. So just kind of let that happen, you know. Get lost in those brush strokes. That's what it's all about. Just smush it like you mean it. Also, as we work tonight, feel free to paint the sides of your canvas. This is called a gallery wrap. When you paint the edges, kind of frames it. You don't have to do that. It's optional. It is a fun little thing to do if you're feeling it. So just a little something to think about as we're working here. As we're working. All right. Now, I see some of us have a few neighbors painting next to us. So let's say you've got someone else painting with you in the room there. You know, I always say painting on your neighbor is encouraged. So, very naughty. But, you know, here's what I say. Wait till your neighbor's really focused. You know what it looks like. That's your golden opportunity. You can give them a little face painting, a little arm tattoo. If they're in the zone, they won't notice till later, till they get to that bathroom and look in the mirror. So have fun with that. I'll try not to get you in too much trouble, though. I'll try. So again, we want to go to about the middle of the canvas. If you want a little past the middle, that's okay. That's okay. And once we've got that, we are going to start mixing up a purple, and then we're going to work from the bottom up into this yellow. We're going to blend those colors a little bit, so we'll have some fun with that. And also, if anyone's wondering, if you saw my canvas, it's got all this texture on it. That's because we recycle ours. So there was probably a good 10 other paintings underneath here. Who knows how many? So, because we only need one example, so we always paint over ours. So if you're looking at my canvas going, why does he have so much texture on there? That's just because it's been recycled a couple times. All right, Shaw, if you have any questions, let me know. I gotcha. Very good. And make sure that paint's nice and wet. Remember, we got to blend into that before it's too dry. So make sure you got a nice, good, wet layer for that golden yellow. What happens if you try to blend paint and it's dry, it's kind of like putting a drop of water on a water slide and trying to go down that water slide. Ouch. It's going to be a rough time. So make sure the paint's nice and wet there. And then once we've got this layer of these light golden yellows, we're going to start blending into it with some purples here. Now, generally speaking, depending on how you do it, if you just mix straight purple and straight yellow, it's going to turn brown. But since we have added a lot of white in here, a lot of that pastel, ours won't be so brown. It'll kind of give us these kind of light, earthy tones in the middle there. So don't be afraid of that. So first off, we got to mix up some purple for ourselves. Oh, Hold on one second there. Looks like I might have cut out. Okay. Am I back? All right, cool. I got a little message there. Sometimes it lets me. Yeah. Otherwise, we want to clean off our big brush tonight. So once you're done with those yellows, let's get Big Mama clean. Paint little circles on the bottom of your cup. Make a little whirlpool. Make a little whirlpool. Make your brush do a little dance. And then dirty brush, get her clean. And then, tap it again on the side of that cup when you're done and on your paper towel a little bit. Every once in a while, when you clean your brush, you'll notice this happen where the paint hangs out where the metal meets the bristles. If that happens, you just give it a good wipe off on your paper towel and then rinse it a second time, and that'll get rid of that for you. So once we've got that brush nice and clean, we're going to start mixing up a purple. And there's a couple ways. Sorry, I dropped my paper towel there. There's a couple ways to make purple if you don't have the same colors as me there. But pretty much we need red and blue. So you don't have to have the same shades of red or blue there, but that's what we're going to be playing around with here. So let's go ahead and get a big scoop of red. Scoop it up like your brush is a shovel there. And drop it onto your extra plate. So I'm putting a big old blob of red on my extra plate there. Then I'll get a scoop of blue. Kind of use that brush like a shovel again. Okay. All right. Red and blue, start there. Let's mix them up. I like to have a little bit more red than blue because it'll give it more of that grapey tone. But you can also use a little bit more blue than red if you prefer. The more red you have, the more it's going to be kind of like a wine color, or like I said, grapey. The more blue you have, the more it's going to be kind of like a periwinkle purple. So it's up to you if you want it to be more grapey, or if you want a little more, periwinkle blue purple. It's really up to you, the shade of purple that you like. The important part is that you've got a color that you like there. So let's see here. Okay. Let me know if anyone else, I'm checking out the comments here. Let me know if y'all are having any problems hearing me tonight. I saw a few more comments there about it being a little slow. Deep purple there. Mine won't be quite that dark when I get into, but first we just want to start by mixing a purple that we like. So that's what mine's looking like. And then I'll just add a little bit of white to it. Just a little scoop of white. So about that much. I'll just add a little scoop of white there. And I'm going to drop that little white into it just to make it a little brighter. You don't need much at first, just a little bit. And now that's what my purple's looking like after the white. It's kind of like a plum purple. And keep in mind the purple in the background is going to be a little bit lighter than, the rest of our painting there. We're going to add a lot of darker purples at the end, overlapping our tree trunks and all that fun stuff. So once you got that purple shade that you like there, we're not going to go all the way up yet. Let's start at the bottom here, and let's paint about halfway up here, or you could just make a letter C with your hand, or letter L, and go about that far. So I'll go to the bottom, be like, boop, a little blob there. So I know about how far up I'm gonna go. Or like I said, whatever space you have left, just go about halfway up. Start at the bottom, big brush strokes, lay them out however you want at this point. It doesn't matter too much how you lay out the brush strokes. It's all about just having fun, smushing that paint like you mean it. I like to do what I call little sweeping X's, or like a figure 8 with my brush. But just smush it however you want there. And remember, you gotta have a lot of paint on the brush. If you run out of this color, mix up some more. And don't be afraid if you mix up more if it's exactly the same. Because like I said, we're gonna have a lot of shades of purple in here. So don't be afraid to kind of like already let that happen. If you run out of this color, it's okay to mix up a fresh batch and have it be slightly different. That just gives it more flavor. Don't be afraid to flavor that canvas. And I want to show you the example one again here real quick. You can see how we've got these really dark purples at the bottom, but in the middle it's super light there. So that's what we're working on right now, is just the lighter layers, and then later on we're going to put all these cool blobs on top at the end because that overlaps those tree trunks. So that's kind of like one of the last steps. Remember, painting is a layering process. It's kind of like I always compare it to like baking a cake, building a house, lasagna, onions. You get the idea. Anything with layers. So in between layers, we usually have to let it dry, and then we can build more on top of that. So we will have a break halfway through class today. Once we've got our background layer, we'll kind of slowly build on top. Let me know if you have any questions as we're going here. Otherwise, keep smushing it like you mean it. And once we're about halfway up here, halfway up the bottom there, we're going to start adding a lot of white to this. The white is going to help it blend a lot more with those purples there. And one thing that's kind of fun is when you start overlapping the yellows, you don't want to have a perfect edge here. If you notice the edge right now of my purples, see how it's really funky and lumpy? This is kind of how you want it to be when you start overlapping those yellows. So we want to be really playful with that. I'll show you the example one again too. You can see how these lighter purples, they kind of start spacing out the further up they get into those yellows. So once we start kind of blending them, you can even just do like little blobs, little taps, and things like that to, you know, space out those brush strokes as we go, all right? Awesome. All right, so what I'll do now, I've got my color. I'm gonna add a nice big scoop of white to it. Get a big scoop of white, stir that in. Big old scoop of white there. Make it a lot brighter, a lot brighter. And then, once you've got your lighter purple there, just add a big scoop of white to it. I want you to go along this edge, start overlapping that purple, let those blend. Again, I'm just doing what I call sweeping X's. You can even tap your brush, it's kind of fun. You can play around with it. We want to blend this now, and then we're going to keep adding white. But first, just add a nice row of brush strokes above what you did with that purple. Get real close to your yellow, or you can start overlapping the yellow a little bit if you want. We want to start getting lighter. So you can see how that row gets a little bit brighter. And I'm going to even go brighter after that. I'm going to even add more white, a little more white. And that's when I'll start really overlapping those yellows. Lots of white there. Don't be afraid to let your purple turn a very, very, very pale, very light shade of purple there. So keep adding white. Each time you go a little further up, you want to add a little bit more white to that purple. Let it turn very, very light pastel purple there. And here we go. We're overlapping those yellows. Let them get to know each other. And then this is fun. Once we start getting into those yellows, like I was telling you before, and I'm going to show you some cool tricks for blending this, but like I was telling you before, you can see my brush strokes are a little funky here. And the more white you add, the easier it's going to blend, by the way. So the more white you add, that'll help with that blend. But once you start getting these funky little edges, you can start just tapping with your brush, and you can pull some random little taps coming off of this group here, spacing them out. And again, we got to catch this paint before it's too dry. And this is going to help blend this edge a little more. Random little taps here. So kind of play around with doing little brush strokes and then little taps to help blend that edge. The more you brush along the edge where the yellow and the purple meet, the more those colors are going to fade together. The less you brush them, the more streakiness you'll see. So you can kind of play around with it depending on the effect you want. But the more you brush it, the more it all fades together. If you're having trouble blending your light purples and your light yellows, there's 2 to 3 little options I have for you there. One easy trick is taking that brush and just once you've got the whole canvas filled in, if you're having trouble with this edge here, where the yellow and purple meet, you can rinse your brush really good in the bottom of that cup. And this is one of the easiest tricks for blending if you're having trouble with that. You tap off your brush a little bit. It's good to have a little bit of moisture on the brush. You just don't want it dripping wet. But you can take a clean brush. It can be a little bit damp. Again, just not dripping with water. And you could just go right over the edge where those 2 colors meet with a clean brush if you're having trouble blending, and just dust along the edge where the purple and the yellow meet. And this will really help fade those colors together a little easier for you there. So just something to think about as we're going. Otherwise, you can always add more white. The more white, the more it's going to help blend it. Third option you have, you can always come back even with your golden yellows start up in that area, and you could brush down into the purples. And that's another good trick for blending. Blending's kind of like a ping pong match, like a little back and forth game, until you get it the way you want it. So don't be afraid to go a little back and forth until you got that going the way you like. But remember, we are going to cover up most of our backgrounds today with all those other layers. So don't worry too much. But if you have any questions on that blending, let me know. Otherwise, just let it flow. Let it go. Get lost in that canvas. And don't forget to party. Woo! Yeah! Up here at the studio, when we ring the bell, we say, if you want to, you're always welcome to take a sip of your liquid inspiration. Not encouraging, just giving you options to think about. All right. If you're like, what is liquid inspiration? That's what we call our wine. You feel inspired in no time, right? So I'm gonna check the comment here. Or the chat here. Let me know if anyone has any questions so far on that background there. Remember, it can be fairly light. There's nothing wrong with that. We are gonna get a little darker at the bottom in a little bit, but don't be afraid to be fairly light at this point. That's a good thing. Just looking at the chat. Awesome. Very good. Yeah, if you ever miss a step or anything, you just let me know. I'm really happy to repeat anything for you as we go tonight. So let me know. Once we got our background on there, we're gonna start adding a few more leaves falling in the background. This is gonna help blend it a little bit too and give it a little more texture. So that'll be kind of nice. And then once we've got a little more of that leafy texture happening in there, pretty soon we'll be adding in some chunks in the background, and then we'll kind of take a little break and we'll add our chunks in the foreground. So there's actually some tree trunks in the background that are a little bit of a duller purple, and then the trees in the front have more bright white in them. So it feels like these trees are a little further in the distance with a little bit of that shadowiness, which I'll show you that when we get to that point. But for now, we're just layering that background. All right. Let me know if you have questions. I won't leave you hanging. Oh yeah, and just if anyone ever arrived to the virtual class a little late, like I said, if you missed a step, let me know. But also, don't ever feel rushed on these virtual classes either, because the cool thing is at the end of class, they're going to be uploading this class for just a very limited time. I think it's only like a couple days, and then they delete it, but they put it up on YouTube in case you need to revisit a step. Maybe you want to come back and rework a step, that kind of thing. You can do that, you know, or if you just got to class a little late or anything like that. So that's the cool thing is, you know, so don't worry if you missed something there. And as you're working tonight, a fun thing to do, you can take little progress pictures as you go. This is something I love to do. It just kind of helps you see your painting, see the evolution of it as you go. It's fun to look back and see all the little steps you did. And also taking little pictures as you go is an artist trick to help you kind of see what you're working on from a fresh perspective. Because you know when you're working, you're like inches from the canvas there. We take a picture, it kind of takes you a little bit back. It zooms you back a little ways so you can kind of see that full image. So use that little trick as you go. And if you are taking pictures, if you're snapping stuff as you go, don't be afraid to tag us. We are Twist Colorado Springs if you're looking for us. You can also see it on the sign up here, Twist Colorado Springs. Or Twist at Home. You can hashtag Twist at Home as you're working. And we'd love to see what you're doing. So don't be afraid to post it as you're working or even when you finish tonight on our Facebook, Google, Insta, anything like that. We would love to see it. For my last class, I had a couple of painters send me their paintings on my Instagram, and I shared it on my story. So if you share with us, we're going to share it too. All right. Very good. So let's talk about what we're going to get into next. We want to add some of those leafy kind of textures falling in the background a little bit. We're just going to do a little bit of this. We'll add more later. I'm going to put this really close, so hopefully we can see it good there. And if you look coming up from the purple area, there's these little bits of textured, very light purples. There's yellows too, but we're going to do the yellows later. But we're going to do these funky little patches of these little purples coming up. And the idea here is texture. That's the whole idea. Lots of texture there. So I will recommend one of your medium brushes Or you could even finger paint this if you want to be one with the paint, all right? I'll show you both methods. They're both fantastic. So I would use a medium brush for this, and you can use your medium round brush or medium flat, whichever one works for you. So I might play around with the medium round brush because it's kind of like finger painting as well, you know? But a flat brush also works good. Either brush you use, pick one that you don't mind giving them a little bit of a bad hair day. You don't want to mess them up too bad, but we're going to take that brush, give them a little rinse there, and just kind of lightly fray your brush a little bit. Just kind of mash it on your table and just kind of lightly fluff them up. Don't mess them up too bad, but give them a little fluff. Give them a little fluff up there. And you can see my bristles are just a little spread out. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. And like I said, if you don't want to use your brush, you could finger paint, and I'll show you both methods and how they both look on here. But first off, we want to use that lightest purple. So the lightest purple you had on here, I've still got some. If you don't have some, you can mix up some more. It doesn't have to be exact. We want to get a little bit of that on our brush, and we don't need a lot. We don't need a lot. So at the beginning of class, I was telling you, mo paint, mo better, you know, lots of paint on the brush. Now, I want you to be a little stingy. I want you to use just a little bit because we're going to do something called dry brushing, very similar to the way it sounds. You don't need a lot of paint because you want to create texture. So it's all about just creating cool little textures here. So I'm just going to very lightly load my brush with a light purple there that I've already got on my plate. If you don't have one mixed up, you can mix up purple again, just add lots of white to it. And then I barely got, you can see I still see some bristles showing on my brush, and that might even be too much paint, so I might even wipe a little off. I'm like, just kidding, I don't want that. I don't want that. So that's how my brush looks, very dry. I can still see the bristles of the brush. So don't need a lot of paint on there. And you can always add more. So start in your light purple area, and you're gonna start blobbing. So you just gotta blob it like you mean it. You gotta blob it like it's hot. You start in this area, you start blobbing, and then you start separating the blobs a little bit as you get into the yellows. So start in the purple area, and you don't have to do a lot of this, just a little bit. Let your brush really fray on you good. The more it frays, the more you get that cool texture. It doesn't have to look like much here, just texture. That's what we're going for. The more it blends in, the better. Don't be afraid of that. And we just want to create these funky little textures coming up. Now, if you don't want to use the brush, then I could finger paint it. So I'm going to do that now. I could dunk 2 of my fingers in that light purple and start again in the light purple area, tapping in a circular motion. And then as I get up into the yellows, spread those dots out. The further up I go, the more you want them to spread out. It's like a party on a canvas here. It's like confetti. Make it rain. Nice little taps there. And you can see, so one side I did finger painting, one side I used the brush, and they're not too different. They're not too different there. So really either method works great. Just depends on how messy you want to get. Don't be afraid to make it messy though. Nature is very messy. Nature is very random. You know, that's the hardest thing when you're painting nature is just being random, because our brains like to compartmentalize things. And so being random can feel a little funny. Sometimes our brains just put things in patterns without us even realizing it. So don't be afraid to be random. If anything looks too perfect, you can always just mess it up a little more. So don't be afraid of that. Painting's all about being messy and expressive. Just express yourselves on that canvas. We're gonna add one more little blobby, purpley texture in here. It's gonna get a little darker. And then we'll probably add a few trees before we take a little break. And believe it or not, you've already almost been painting. We've been painting for about 40 minutes-ish now already. So at about, in the middle of class, about like 7-ish, we'll probably take a little break, or 6:45, 55, something like that. And we'll have a little dry break. And that's a good time just to dry the canvas, get some more liquid inspiration, refill your drinks if you need to, or get more snacks, and that kind of thing. And again, if you got your favorite jams playing in the background while we're painting tonight, don't be afraid to shake it while you make it, all right? You can wiggle while you work. That's what it's all about. Remember, you got to express yourselves. This is a very messy background. Very messy. More messy, more better. If you have questions, I'm going to go ahead and show you the next color. But if you have questions, let me know. Let me know. Here, I'm going to show you mine up close a little bit there. It's just so you can see how messy that texture is. It's real fun. And I know it's very light right now. Once we get into those darker colors, you'll be able to see them a little easier on mine. I'm giving it a little tilt so I don't get too much of that glare from above there. So, all right. We just want to add one more little color. We're going to do the same thing, except for this time we're going to start at the bottom, and then we're just going to work our way up. And you don't have to go as far this time. We'll stay mostly in the purple areas, but you can have a few of these darker purple textures creep into the yellow a little bit, but we'll do less. So, same technique here, and same brush. Don't have to fully clean your brush. You can just take what's on there, wipe it off on your napkin, your paper towel, your neighbor's arm, whatever's closest. And then we want to get a slightly darker purple. So let's again mix purple up, get a scoop of red and a scoop of dark blue, and stir those together. Scoop of red, scoop of dark blue. Remember, like before, you can have more red than blue or more blue than red, just depending on the type of purple you like. You can experiment. You can play around with mixing it with a little more red, see what that looks like, or a little more of the blue, See which shade you like better there. We get a nice dark purple here. Again, here's what mine's looking like. It's pretty dark there, pretty dark. And then I'm just gonna add like a little tiny little drop of white in there. Just a little splash of white. So once you get your color mixed up, just a tiny bit of white. We don't want it much brighter, just a little bit. Because it's still gotta be darker than what we were just working with. And the blue can help darken it up too if you need to. But there's what my color's looking like there. You can see my light purple next to it and then the dark purple there and how it's a bit darker. So make sure there's a nice little contrast. Once you got your darker purple, start at the bottom and same thing. Your dots can be closer at the bottom and then they get more and more spread out as you go. This is all texture here. It's all watch out for the easel. If you're working on the easel, they like to dance sometimes when you're painting, especially when you're kind of doing this blobbing. Oop, might have cut out there. Oh yeah, so especially when you're doing like a little blobbing, sometimes these easels like to run away from you. So if you start noticing that, put a little hand around the back there and get a firm grip on it, because they will shake it while you make it. So be careful. They'll dance away from you before you know it. Otherwise, we just keep blobbing. Just blob it like you mean it. Blob it like it's hot. We're just tapping in those little brush strokes. Just tap it in. Just tap it in. Tap it in like Happy Gilmore. And you can see the further up I go, the more they spread out. Again, think of it as like confetti. It's a party on a canvas. It's giving it nice texture here. That's what we want, lots of texture. If you want your purple darker, remember you can always add more blue and red in there. Especially the blue is going to darken it up. If you're hearing some weird sound coming from my area, it's my little sign up here. It's shaking it quite a bit while I'm tapping. That's what I was telling you. These things will dance on you while you're working. So hang on tight. Otherwise, we're just blobbing. If you got music going on, just blob to the beat. I'm going to check the chat. Let me know if you have any questions. All right. Sweet. Remember, as you get into the lighter purple, let your brush really run out of paint. The more it runs out, the more you get that cool texture. You don't have to go up as far if you don't want to. These can be a little further down. But you can see how much these blobs are actually helping with the blending in the background. And it's also giving us that fun kind of fall feel where there's all this foliage kind of piling up in the background. And that's what we're going for here. Lots of texture. Remember, the dots are more clustered at the bottom and more spread out the further you go up. It's kind of like your dots get a little curious. They're kind of like in little groups at the bottom, and then some of them get a little brave and curious. They want to start exploring further away from their group there, So think of it that way. You've got a few little explorer dots, but most of them are kind of grouped together. Got a few brave explorers in the bunch though there. All right, we're doing good. Let's see here. Okay. Looking good, everybody. As you're blobbing, give yourselves a hand. Woo! Just the party bell in case you're getting a little focused there. Awesome. So soon we're going to start adding in our background tree trunks, which will be really fun. And the cool thing when we start getting into those trees, I'll let y'all kind of finish your background there. And I'll just kind of give you a little preface about the trees. Cool thing about trees is you don't have to have any straight lines. Isn't that nice? No straight lines needed, or as I call them, sober lines, depending on what you're drinking tonight. So that's the nice thing about trees. In fact, you know, the more kind of bend and wiggles you've got in those tree trunks, the more natural they're honestly going to look. If your trees were all perfectly straight, it just wouldn't look right. It's like if you went out into the forest and then all the trees were exactly the same height and they were all perfectly straight and all had the same amount of branches. You'd be like, something weird is going on here. Like, that doesn't look right. That's not what I'm used to seeing, you know? So that's the cool thing and nice thing when you're painting nature is weirdness is a good thing. Nature is extremely random. So don't be afraid to let your trees have. They can have a little lean to them. They can have lots of little wiggles, little knots on the sides and all that good stuff. So we'll have a lot of fun making our happy little tree trunks and all that good stuff. So what we'll do next here is start playing around with those trees, and then we'll probably let this dry for a little bit and go from there. So I'm going to go ahead and show you this example one again, just since I have it on hand here. And hopefully you can see it good here. We might even need to emphasize it a little more than they did on this example. But there's trees in the distance. These are a darker purple. And then the trees in the front, they are like a very bright white. And then they have the shades thrown on top. And you can see the tree trunks, the big tree trunks that are close to us, they go further down on the canvas. You know, and then the ones that are shadowy and light purples, they're way back here. They're way back here. They're kind of branching off of the purple area. And then the big trees are going to be all coming up from the bottom there. So that's kind of how we separate the trees. Since we are, you know, just doing the background trees, we don't have to wait for it to get dry because the background trees are just going to pick up some of those background colors. So that's kind of nice. But we do have to let it get dry for the big main trees because we want them to stay bright white at first, you know, and blend into that. Otherwise, if we don't, then they'll kind of get mixed and muddy with everything. Are we supposed to, I just saw your comment here, Taylor. Are we supposed to have those dark yellow spots already in the upper area? That's a great question. Not yet. And I'll tell you why. I'll show you up here. So those dark yellows, if you notice, they're actually going on top of these tree trunks. They're in front of the tree trunks. So we actually are doing those dark yellows. That's going to be a step for the end. So that was a great question. Yes, because it does look like some of that's in the background, but it is actually going on top of the trees there. It kind of gives that cool depth. So that's what we'll be doing there. Great question. Anyone else have a good question like that for me? Phew. Yeah, you didn't miss a step. Don't worry. Awesome. Okay, so we'll start working on our silhouetted trees. We want to mix up a color for this. And again, you can use your medium brush for this. So medium, flat, or round brush will work great. So either one, just make sure it's a medium brush. And these medium brushes, they're like 1/2 inch or so, or maybe even a little less than that. So, and then we're gonna mix up a nice kind of medium purple that's gonna be branching off. It's gonna be kind of closer to this lighter shade we've got. So it's going to be, because it's going to be branching off from there. So it's going to be similar to this color. It can be a little lighter, a little darker, but we're going to make a color kind of that's in between these two purples here. So that's what we're going to play around with. So let's start off and get our blue and red mixed up. So again, mix up a little more blue and red if you need to. This time, just to kind of make my trees stand out a little different, I'm going to have a little bit more blue in my mixture. Just a little bit more blue than red. Just a little bit. Not much. Not where you can tell a big difference, but just a hair of a difference there. Once I've mixed up my purple, nice and dark there. Again, I used a little more blue this time, just a little bit. It's nice and dark. Then I'm gonna add a little scoop of white. Let's get like a little scoop of white in there. And stir that up. A little scoop of white. Remember, we're going for a purple that's kind of in between your darkest and your lightest there. But closer, I'd say closer to the lightest purple. So somewhere in between the two. So again, we did a scoop of the red and blue. I used a little more blue, and then I added a little bit of white into it, just a tiny bit of white. Not much yet. Okay, here's what I'm looking like here. So there was my lightest purple. Now here's this purple. It might still be a little too dark. So I'm gonna add just one more little splash of white, just a little bit. It's always kind of good to start with a little bit and add it as needed there. Now, this is kind of fun if you want to do this, and this kind of happens naturally a little bit because of those yellows in the background. But if you want to make this color a little more muted or desaturated, if you're like, what is he saying? He's speaking another language. All that means can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Awesome. Okay, cool. Yeah, oh. Let's see. Okay, I should be back now. I had a little warning there for a second. I usually only have blips for like just a couple seconds. So cool, I should be back. So again, I was talking about colors. If you don't want your colors so bright or saturated, what does desaturated mean? It's like if you added gray to a color. So if you add gray to a color, it's not gonna be so bright and it kind of dulls out the color. Saturated just means it's very bright and vibrant and there's no gray mixed in. If you mix in a gray, it kind of tones down that color brightness and makes it, it's kind of like going from a bright blue to a blue gray. If you go outside and you see the sky is a very bright blue sky that day, that's a very saturated sky. If the sky is and it just makes it a little less of a intense purple. It's a little more earthy or a little more of like a purpley gray. But that's just optional. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Just showing you some fun little stuff to do with colors there. So once we've got our color here, and let me go ahead and show you mine again so you can see good. We want them a little darker because remember these trees are in the distance, but we don't want them super dark either. So in between your two purples there, and there's, oops, let me get my mixed up there. That's what mine's looking like. So it's not as bright as this. It's not as dark as down here, but it's, you know, a little bit in between the two. So as long as you got something about like that, you're good. So these trees should be a little smaller, not as big as our main ones. And these trees are gonna start in the middle of our purple, or I guess the lighter purple area, but you don't want them starting in the yellow. They definitely wanna start in the purple. And you want to space them weird. So have like one tree, then have like a couple next to each other, and then another one. I like to do an odd number of trees. So you can either copy me or you can put them wherever you want. This is your happy little forest. Don't make your trees all the same size. Make some thicker, some thinner, and that kind of thing. We're just going to start with the trunk first. So you can watch me if you want. We're going to go all the way to the top here. So I'm going to start my first tree trunk on the, and I'll walk you through it if you want to put them where I'm putting them. So I'm going to start my first one on the left over here. So I'm going to make a little letter C with my hands. I'm going to go, whoop, turn it sideways, little letter C. And then I will put my little blob right there where I want to start my tree. Now, if you put your first little blob and you're like, wow, that's really dark. Mine looks a little dark. You can always add a touch more white, just a touch more there. And then you start your tree there and you start wiggling up. You just go, whoop, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And give it a little shake it while you make it. And then work your way back down. Trees should always be a little thicker at the base and a little thinner as they go up, just a little bit. And you can kind of see that on mine. And like I said, if you feel like that's too dark, you can easily get a little white if you don't want it that dark, and you can take a little white and just splash it right on top there. Now, if you're using a flat brush like me, I'll show you a fun little trick here. If you're using a flat brush, so the full width of the brush obviously gives you those really thick brush strokes. But if you flip your brush this way, you can actually get a pretty thin brush stroke. So when you're trying to do those like thinner parts, or if you want a thinner tree, you can use the edge of your brush. And that works really good. So just a little something to think about. The less pressure you put on a brush, the thinner your brush strokes are going to be there. So if you're trying to make it a little thinner, just leave a little more room there. Okay. Now I'm going to leave a little gap again. Let's leave about another letter C. So I'm going to leave another letter C over here and start my next tree. They don't have to all start in the same spot exactly. This one could be a little further down, so maybe I'll start him a little lower. But again, roughly a letter C apart. And then same thing, start at the bottom, wiggle up. It can have a little lean to it. Doesn't need to be a straight line. If you're feeling nervous to start these trees, just take a deep breath or a sip of some liquid courage, and you'll be fine. Remember to put a little more pressure, and you can make the trunk just a tiny bit thicker at the bottom. They're always a little thicker at the bottom and then a little thinner at the top. But notice my trunks have lots of little wiggles on the sides, little knots. They don't need to be straight lines. Shake it while you make it. Wiggle while you work. Be one with that tree tonight. All right. Very good. Remember, you can always add white if you need to. These don't all have to be the exact same shade. As long as they're just a little darker than our trees in the distance, in the foreground, then we're okay. And then I'm gonna have another tree next to this one, really close to him. And this one I want it to be a little thinner. So if you have trouble making a thinner brush stroke, you can use your little brush or the edge of your flat brush and light pressure. So I'm just gonna leave like maybe a finger width in between these two trees or a thumb width. Just a little tiny sliver of space there, and I'll have another tree. He's not gonna start in the exact same spot, maybe a little taller up on the page there, but I'm gonna do a thinner tree here. And I'll put a little pressure as I work my way back down, giving him a little bit of a thicker chunk at the bottom. Looking good, y'all. Make sure you don't forget to breathe when you're making those trees, all right? Sometimes when we're doing details, we have a tendency to hold our breath. We're like, here we go. And then by the time you get to that end of the tree, you're about to pass out. You're turning a little blue. So don't pass out on me. Surprisingly, I've seen it happen just a couple times. So be careful. Keep that oxygen flowing. It's all good. Just be one with that tree. You got this. Remember, no two trees are the same. Let them all have their own little personality. That's what's wonderful about trees. If they were all the same, we would be really bored going out to that forest if they all looked exactly the same. So, that's the cool part. Now that we've got about 3 trees on here, I'll add like 2 or 3 more. It's up to you. And the next one I'll leave, let's see. If you're copying me, we want to leave like, let's say a knuckle and a half. So my knuckle here between these 2 parts is 1 inch roughly. That's roughly 1 inch. So I'll leave like 1 knuckle or a knuckle and a half. Boop. Start my next tree. You can use sound effects. Sound effects always help, all right? And remember, you can see my trunks don't all start in the same spot. Some are a little higher, some are a little lower. So kind of play around with staggering them a little bit there. This next one, I'll maybe have him a little lower, and I'll make him like medium. He won't have to be, maybe I'll make him in between the 2. Not as thin as the other 2, but he can be a little smaller. I mean, not as thin as the last one, but maybe not as thick as these. Maybe he's kind of in between the 2. You can play around with it however you'd like. Some of these trees, also keep in mind, will get covered up because we're going to overlap them with our other trees to give it that cool sense of depth and perspective there. And the darker your trees are, just kind of makes them feel like they're further away from you in the distance, which is really neat. So nothing wrong with that. Make sure you're still using plenty of paint on the brush, nice and saucy. Keep that brush saucy. Remember, to blend into that paint, it's got to stay wet there. Okay, I just saw your comment. The yellow is coming through in a lot of your tree trunks. That is okay. If it bothers you and you feel like it's too much yellow coming through, don't be afraid to make your purple a little bit darker, and you can go even a little thicker with the paint. Another option is you could, if you have like a hair dryer on hand and you feel like you just want it to be a little more dry, you can always give it a little 30 seconds with the hair dryer, or take a little extra plate and fan it good. But generally speaking, purple will overpower those yellows the darker it is. So if you just make it a little darker and maybe go a little thicker with the paints and lighter brush strokes, that should help cover up that bit of yellow. But it's not a bad idea to have a little bit of yellow peeking through. That's kind of supposed to happen naturally a little bit. That's why we wanted to paint over it while it was still wet there. Let me know if that helped you out. If that answered your question. If not, let me know. Let me know. I won't leave y'all hanging, so let me know any questions. Awesome. Perfect. So I'll add, like I said, maybe 2 more trees. I'll do another little one and then another medium one maybe. So these are going to be on the edge. They're going to be way over on the edge over here. So I got an idea. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with one on the edge, and then I'm going to put one next to it. So I'm going to just start one right along the edge here. Wherever you want them to grow. You can be a little taller than the last one or a little shorter. And I'll have one little trunk going off the page there, right along the edge. And I'll make him a little bigger. There we go. And then I'll have a little guy next to him. Maybe I'll make that one a little taller. And for that last 2, one's on the edge, and the other one I'll leave maybe a finger width or a thumb width in between the 2, and make another little guy over here. But you could have more trees on the left if you want, or less trees. You know, it's up to you. Everyone's going to be a little different. That's the beauty of this. None of us are going to smush the paint the same way. It's kind of like all those famous artists we all know, like Van Gogh, Picasso, people like that. Let's say you gave this painting to Van Gogh and Picasso. Those 2 guys are going to paint it completely different, but they'll have a similar result, you know? So that's kind of what we're doing here. We'll all be painting, you can tell we all painted something similar, but we're all going to have our own unique touch, our own unique way of laying out those brush strokes. So let your own little artistic personality happen on that canvas. That's what it's all about. But check the chat there. Let me know if there's any more questions as we're going here. All right. Cool. Very good. Just keep being one with those tree trunks. You got this. So before they get too dry, we do want to add in our cool little knots and textures. It's kind of nice if we catch it before it's too dry. And in fact, I'll give you a little tip as we go here. When we start coming back to the first tree, we'll start with the first one we were working on and then work our way over. That way, if it did get a little dry, we can rehydrate it and that kind of thing. So if you come back to that first one and the paint's already dry, I highly recommend putting a little wet paint back on top of it before you start adding in your little textures. But let me go ahead and show you those tree textures a little closer, and then we'll go from there because they are funky and weird. So the hardest thing is being weird. So let me show you what we can do for those tree textures. I've got a little extra canvas here I'm going to use as my demo canvas. So if you're like, what is he doing? I am just using this to show you some of those brush strokes up a little closer there. So it's just my little demo canvas here. So I'll show you how we can make fun little tree textures. Let me get a little more purple and then we'll go from there. Looks like I was running a little low on my purple. So, and this will be the same when we get into our bigger trees, but we're just gonna start here and I'll remind you again how to do this when we get to those bigger trees. So I'll show you a big tree up close and then we'll go from there. Our trees are a lot smaller, but let's just pretend for the sake of the example here that our trees are really big. So I'm gonna make a really big trunk here so y'all can see it up close is the whole idea there. So this is our trunk, and this is like, pretend we're zooming in on one of these trunks here. And let me show you that little texture. So it's really fun. We're gonna be using black paint, and you're gonna keep what's on your brush. You don't wanna clean it. You're actually gonna keep that purple on there. And we're gonna start taking black, and here's what I like to do for these cool little knots and textures in those aspen trees. You start on the edge here, and think of it as like making very shallow little happy faces. Some longer, some shorter. So you start on the edge, and you go whoosh, and you lift off. Some longer, some shorter. You don't want to make a pattern. Some of them can cluster together. This has already given us a little bit of that funky little texture we want there. So that's the first place I start, real random. Sometimes you can have just like one little line, you know? Sometimes you can do like a little zigzag. Sometimes you can have, like I said, a cluster of lines all kind of coming together there. They don't have to go all the way across. They can come off of one side or the other side, wherever you want. Once we get some of these little textures into those trunks like that, little happy faces, some longer, some shorter, the hardest thing is not making a pattern. Then you want to add in some other funky textures, which can just be blobs. So I could come back to some of these and I could just blob into it like this and add some weird, kind of think of it as puddles or like camouflage. You can put funky little dots, little clusters of dots here and there. But again, you don't want to make a pattern. So it's a mixture of lines, little happy faces, and little blobby puddles, little blobby puddles. The hardest thing is, again, not making a pattern, because before you know it, here's what happens a lot. A lot of times I will see it like this. It'll be like 1, 2, 3. There's my puddle. 1, 2, 3. There's my puddle. And before you know it, you've got this perfect pattern going up your whole tree there. So that's the hardest thing, is just not making a pattern, honestly, and being weird with it. So it's little happy curves. They're not deep curves, so it's not like this happy, okay? It's a very shallow little happy curves, little smudges, little blobby puddles, and that kind of thing. So it's all about texture here. All about texture. So that's what we're gonna play around with. And you might want to use your little brush for some of this, or if you're good at being light with your touch, you can use your flat or round brush here. So we'll start working on those trees and adding those cool little textures. So to start, again, let's say by now your tree might have got a little dry. So you can take your purple, go back to that first one, make sure that paint's still wet. So I'll go ahead and put a little wet paint down because we want it to mix into the paint a little bit there. And you can do this before each one. You can put a little wet paint down first if you need to. And that'll also help you cover up that background more if you needed help with that. But then I'll start getting black. I'll start getting a little black on my brush. Start with a little bit. You can always add more. And if you have a little tester sheet, you can practice making your little textures on your extra little sheet there to play around with it a little bit. But use your little brush or your medium brush for this. If you're using the medium brush, you got to be light with that touch. If you have a tendency to be heavy-handed, hold your brush further away from you. If you hold it like a pen, you're going to press down way too hard. If you hold it further away, it's easier to do that light touch. So either way works there. But I'm going to start on the edge here. And like I said, you can go on either side of the tree. And I just go, I just lift off. Lift off as I go. Lift off. It's all about texture here. When I'm using my flat brush, this one can cover a little more ground a little quicker if you lift off. Because as the brush frays naturally, it just gives you these cool, funky little textures there. And like I said, they can come from either side. So don't be afraid to have some on the other side there, but space it out real weird. If you start noticing they're all kind of looking the same, leave a bigger gap or put a little weird puddle somewhere, you know, just to break up that space. It's all about being weird and random here. These trees in the distance will, like I said, get covered up to some extent, so don't worry too much there. Funky little textures here. The weirder, the better. Play around with happy faces, blobs, little puddles, kind of like camouflage. Remember, the weirder the better. Keep it funky. And it should be kind of lightly mixing with that wet paint underneath and giving you funky little textures. Is that all black, the texture? Great question. So here's my brush. You can see I still have purple on my brush, and I just dunked the tip in a little bit of black there, just the tip of the brush. So it's good to have a little purple because then you'll get kind of purpley grays, and it's good to have some really pure black in there too, but that's why we want to catch that tree before it's too dry so we get kind of purpley grays, and that's why you don't have to fully clean your brush. So don't be afraid to still have purple on there the whole time you're doing this. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, the more shades of purpley gray you can get, the better. You don't need 50 shades, just a couple, all right? What'd I say? So we'll keep working our way. Remember, you can use your little tiny brush, especially when you get to those baby trees. You might want to definitely switch to your little mama brush. Remember, that's what we're calling a little brush tonight. Little mama. Little mama needs some love. So if you haven't used your little brush, when you get to those baby trees, bust it out. And remember, each tree as I go, I'm going to put a little bit of wet paint down just in case that tree got dry. If yours is not dry, you are good to go. Since I'm working on a recycled canvas, it tends to dry a little faster than a normal canvas. It's like a super absorbent sponge. So that's why I have to rehydrate mine a little more than y'all probably need to. But hey, do it as needed there. as needed. So keep it funky, keep it weird here. The weirder, the better. If you want to carve your initials on one of those trees, go for it. That's kind of a fun thing to do. Especially at the end, if you want to sign it that way, that's a cool way to sign it. Just giving you fun stuff to play around with there. Remember to play around with blobs and happy faces. Sometimes you can have just one little happy face, sometimes a little cluster. So try to really not make a pattern. That's the hardest thing. It's just being random. Nature makes randomness look so easy. Makes it look so easy. So funky, funky here. And remember, we'll cover a lot of this. Y'all are doing fantastic. Just keep getting lost in those textures. I'm gonna show you mine up close here, so you can see how weird they are. Look at those weird textures. So weird. So weird. And I want to show you the other example we have here, just so you can see really how messy a lot of this is. And these trees, like I said, they didn't make them quite as dark as maybe they needed to be for the background ones, but here they are. And look how messy those textures are. I mean, they are so messy. So don't be afraid to be really weird with it. Really weird. Like I said, the weirder the better. And you can rinse off your brush in between each tree if you need to, because if that tree is dry and you have to hydrate it with the paint there before you blend in your little textures, then you might have to, rinse the brush, rinse the black off, put the purple, but you don't have to rinse the purple off. Remember, you can keep that as you start adding those textures. If you feel like any of this is too dark, you can always, actually use more purple to go over some of it and just kind of soften it, and that's okay too. Happy little trees, you got this. Remember, no two trees are the same. You can name all your little trees if you want. This one's Earl. That's Dave. Just kidding. You do whatever you want. Just get lost in those trees. Let me know if you have questions. I will not leave you hanging. I'm gonna check the chat out there. Very good. Now, if you make a texture on there and you're like, ooh, I don't like that one. You can always get to the end of your trees, come back to that one tree that was bugging you. Just go back over, if it's a little more dry, you can kind of go over it with a little more purple on that spot and just kind of blend that little spot away if it's bugging you, So you can always think of painting as like a little ping pong match. It's like a little back and forth game, a little give and take. Otherwise, just keep it weird. Looking good, Twisters. Woo! It's a fun thing to notice if you are painting with somebody there. When we're doing little details, sometimes you look over at that neighbor and you notice they've got a tongue sticking out. They're like, or maybe they've got some veins, pulsing in that forehead. You've got a good opportunity for a little face painting, a little arm tattoo. They won't notice. So carpe diem. Any questions, y'all? All right, I don't see any questions right now. You're doing good. You're doing good. We'll keep moving and grooving on these trees. We'll spend a few more minutes there, and then we'll be taking a break pretty soon here. I'll give you one more fun little optional step on these trees before we break, and then we'll go from there. Also, like I said, don't be afraid to let your brush kind of fray on you. You don't have to have as much paint for this. The more those bristles fray, the more you get cool little textures. So don't be afraid of that. And we're just moving and grooving now. Remember, for your little trees, you don't have to use the brush I'm using. You can definitely, and you probably want to use your little mama. It's kind of harder unless you're real light with that touch to get those little brush strokes in there with this medium brush. So the baby trees, you might want a little guy. We are in the painting zone now. Don't let me get in my zone. Don't be afraid to have little gaps too in your textures. Every once in a while, it's kind of nice to have like a big gap here and there. Just makes it, again, feel more random. So don't be afraid to have weird little gaps as you go. All right. If anyone has questions, let me know. Sweet. I hope y'all are feeling in touch with your inner artist. We're getting there. If you're not there yet, don't worry. We'll get there. Or the wine will get you there. Oh, I just saw your comment. I'm bad at coloring in the lines. That's okay. You can go outside the lines. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, when I went to art school, they were like, here's the rules of art so that you can break them. That's what they told us. Like, okay, all right. So you know, you can break those rules. You don't have to stay inside the lines. That's the nice thing. If you get outside the lines a little bit though, you can always make that tree a little wider, and that can fix that. So nothing wrong with that. And you can always switch to that little bitty brush if you're having trouble staying inside the lines there. That can help. And just light brush strokes. Again, if you ever, you know, most of us are used to using pens and pencils, where you really have to, and tablets even, and our phones, they all require pressure, you know. Painting is the opposite. So that's why the more paint you have and the less you press down, the thinner those brush strokes you can get. So if you're having trouble with that, just hold that brush further away from you. It sounds weird, and it feels weird at first, but you really can get a much lighter touch that way. Or kind of lift off as you go. That also helps too, getting those lighter little textures and such. So one more little fun thing you can add, if you want to, optional. I like to do this. I still got purple on my brush and a little black. It's kind of like purpley grayish at this point. And sometimes what I like to do, and I wouldn't do the whole edge there, but you can go along the left side of your tree trunks if you want to, and you can just do like a little bit of an outline, not a full outline, just a little bit here and there, just like this. Just a little something, something. I like to do this sometimes. Just adds a little more of a shadow on the left side of your tree there. So here I did a little bit on these two sides. So it's got gaps. But there it is. I put a little line, left a little gap. There's another little bit of a shadow line, left another little gap. So if you want to, it's kind of fun. You can just put a little bit of a hint of a left shadow. It looks good, especially at the bottom of the tree and the top of the tree. The middle doesn't have to have as much there. But if you want to put a little hint of a shadow on the left side, it's like a funky little outline, but you're not outlining the whole thing. And you can mix it with your purples so that it's a little more subtle. It can be more of a purpley gray. It doesn't have to be so dark. But it is fun. You don't have to have it if you want it. It just adds a little something, something. Just a little something, something, if you want it. And there we go. And that just kind of gives a little deeper shadow on the left side of my trunks there. But that's all I did there. Now I have one final little option for you. This could help you if you are wanting to take away some of your textures or just soften those textures a little bit. And I wouldn't do a lot of this, but if you want to, it's optional. It's optional. Once you've got all your tree textures on there, maybe you want a little hint of a highlight. Remember, these trees are farther away. We're going to have the bigger trees closer, and they're going to have more colors on them. But if you want to give these a subtle little highlight, you can take the purple that you were using. You can add a tiny bit of white to it just to notice a difference, but not a lot. And you can make a slightly lighter purple. And you could come back to your trees here and add that same texture you did with the black, but do with a slightly light purple there. And you can just kind of add little splashes, little happy faces. They can go in between the black areas, and you don't have to do as much. You can just do a little bit. And that's kind of a fun little added texture in there. And I did on this tree over here. This is the only one I did it on. See, there's that light purple now. You can see light purple. And then there's the dark texture. So if you want to, it's a fun thing. You don't have to, and I wouldn't do a lot. Just kind of in between some of the black areas here and there. It's kind of fun to add. I just like to do it, but you don't have to if you don't want to. I like to show you little optional stuff, little fun things you can kind of play around with to give your painting a little something, something as we go, you know. And like I said, I'm just barely putting in that lighter purple, just kind of hints of it, just where I feel like it. Maybe there's a little more sunlight, just catching in a few areas and that kind of thing. You don't have to do it on every one of them, just a few of them maybe even. And it's just fun. If you don't want it though, it's so subtle, you'll barely notice it, but it can help you if you're trying to get rid of a texture or just soften one of those textures you got on there a little bit. Because if it runs into the black, it'll just kind of lighten it up a little. And like I said, just soften it. So it's a good little tip there as you're going, if you want to. And it's very subtle. And that's all I'm gonna do there. So I've got my base, my shadows, and a slightly lighter purple in there. And that's it. And then I've got those funky little trees. And you can see mine got lots of little knots in them. That's a good thing. Let them have lots of knots. That's what I love about it. The weirder, the better. Nothing wrong with that. You can always come back and add more to a tree if you want to. So if you have any questions on those last little touches there, please let me know. Otherwise, we are going to be taking a short little break pretty soon here. We've been painting for an hour and 25 minutes already. So before we can get into our final tree trunks on there, we need to get this pretty dry because those trees are going to start nice and bright white there, and then they'll have all these fun little shadows in them. So that's what we're going to be getting to next. Let me know if you have questions on your happy little trees there. Otherwise, we're going to have a little 5-minute break. We'll jump back into it at about 7:30. Again, the break time is your time to stretch your legs. Most importantly, get that painting dry. If you have a hair dryer on hand, if you do a little sweeping motion, it'll dry your painting in like 30 seconds to a minute tops. If you don't have a hair dryer, just grab an extra little plate or like a little paper fan, and you can just kind of fan it for a good minute or so, and then that should dry it pretty quick. So we're gonna have a little drying break, and this is also a good time, you know, refill your snacks, refill your drinks, give some artist shout outs in the chat box and all that good stuff. And like I said, we'll resume in about 5 minutes here, or take a little restroom break, that kind of thing. And then we'll jump back into it. So my mic will be muted once I officially take that break there, once we take a little break. So you won't be able to hear me for just a minute, so don't worry, nothing's out there. But if you have questions before the break, let me know. I'm gonna check that out. Oh yes, what is the Instagram account? You can find us if you go to Twist Colorado Springs, and you'll find our Instagram, and then you can tag us. And if you tag us, we would love that. We'll share it too. Also, you can put hashtag twist at home as well, and that's another way we can find you when you post stuff. So absolutely. I'm going to type that in there actually so everyone can see it. At Twist Colorado Springs. There we go. Or you can hashtag twist at home. There we go. Put some stuff in the chat for you. Also, if anyone ever wants to check out my personal art, I also do paintings at home. I do murals, all kinds of stuff. So if you ever want to check out what I do on this side there, I'll throw my Instagram handle in as well. I am Tyler Dixon Murals is where you can find me. And I do all kinds of fun, funky stuff as well if you want to see what I like to paint as well. Love painting aspen trees, by the way, like we're doing tonight. I've gotten to do a lot of really fun, big aspen tree murals on like people's living room walls and condos and stuff like that. Love painting aspens. They're so fun. I just love painting trees in general. All right, y'all. We'll have a little 5-minute break here. If you're still working, no worries. Take your time, get your final little touches there, and then give yourself a little break. Most importantly, like I said, we want to get these fairly dry. I'd say 90% dry is good enough. And because really the most parts that we need dry are the really dark parts down here. And most of that's probably getting pretty dry already. Just depends on how much texture you have. So we'll start about, I guess we'll start now probably about 7:35-ish, or maybe a little sooner. So we're gonna take a little break for 5, stretch our legs, refill those drinks, and I will be right back. Y'all, if you have any other questions, leave them for me in the chat, and I'll check in just a bit here. And my mic will be muted during the break, so that's why you won't hear any sound. Don't worry though, it's all working still. All right, y'all, looking good. I'll be right back. What's up, everybody? I'm back. So we'll get started in just a few here. Go ahead and make sure you got all your supplies ready there. Make sure you refilled your liquid inspiration if needed. Or got any more snacks, that kind of thing. And most importantly, make sure it's dry-ish. As long as it's not like super thick and sticky, then you should be okay. I said about 50%, or about 90% dry is probably good there. Most importantly, you just need the dark areas dry. And if you're wondering, is my painting dry? If it looks pretty shiny and glossy, it's probably still wet. Otherwise, you can just give it a little tap, give it a little spirit fingers, a little jazz hands. Check it out. Give it a little tap there. Give it a little tap. Make sure it's dry-ish. So once we've got it fairly dry there, we're going to start working on our next trees. These trees are really fun. And these trees are going to be our big trees. There's about 5 of them here. And they're going to kind of stagger in between the other trees. So there's 2 over here. You can see they're going further down, and there's about 3 on this side, about 3, and they're real close together. So there'll be like an odd number there, but you can do less, you can do more. That's up to you. But our big trees, they'll stagger in between some of these, and some of them are going to overlap. You can see on this side how, on this side, you can see how some of these trees in the background did get covered up with our bigger trees there. So that's okay. That's a good thing. That's what gives it that depth. So we'll start playing around with that next. All right, y'all. So it's officially time to jump back into it, or as I like to say, let's party on, Twisters. Party on, Wayne. All right, so the next trees are gonna start actually with a really light purple, but then we're gonna highlight them with white, and they're gonna be really, really bright. So it's gonna be really cool, and then we'll have those nice deep shadows in there. So let's make a very light purple to start here. And you'll probably want to use your medium brush again to draw these trees out. Or if you want, you could even use your big brush, honestly, and kind of use the edge of the brush. And that would work good too. So let's start this time. And don't be afraid to reload your paint. I know I need more white paint, so I'm going to get a little more white on my palette here. And we'll go ahead and get a nice, let's do 2 big scoops of white. So get 2 big scoops of white. Drop that on your little plate there. Make a new pod. And then just dunk a corner of your brush in blue and a corner of your brush in red. And we're going to mix that together. So here's what it looks like on my brush. So I got 2 big scoops of white. There it is. Got a little blue, a little red on my brush there. And I'll go ahead and stir that into that. And we want a very light purple. Really light. Nice, light, pale purple. Like a pastel purple is what you're looking for there. I'm going to put a hint more red and blue, just barely. Much lighter than the trees you just did there. Much, much lighter. Should really stand out. So here we go. That's my color starting to look like there. It's almost white, but there's definitely purple in it. So again, pastel. Go for pastels here. I'm going to add a touch more red and blue to mine, just a touch. Just a touch. All right. Once you've got a very pale purple, the shade that you like there, we can start making these tree trunks. I'm going to show you mine again here. And I kind of mixed mine on top of my old purple there, so I can kind of tell, because it was already dry. That was my purple for the old trees. There's my purple for the new trees. It's very light. On your screen, it probably almost looks white, but there is a hint of purple in there. So very, very light. Once you got that, we'll start making these tree trunks. Same thing. Don't add actually, my bad. Same thing. We're going to go ahead and start with the trunk and add in our black texture the exact same way. And then we're going to add a white highlight on the other side, and I'll show you that when we get there. But for now, let's do the same thing we did with our other trees. These should be bigger trees, though, and stagger in between these other trees. And they should start lower on the canvas here. So they don't have to touch the bottom, but they can get real close to it. So I'm going to go a lot lower now. I'm going to put a little boop right down here. And I'm going to start that first one. It's going to be way over here. Wiggling a little bit while I make it. It's a very light purple there. And remember, these trees are going to be a little bigger. So I'm going to give them a little thicker trunk there. As I work my way back down, I just make it get a little thicker. Don't worry if it gets big. It can get thicker than a Snicker. That's okay. And the bottom of your tree is going to get covered up with all of your flowers and stuff. So don't worry about the bottom too much. If you want to though, I sometimes make the bottom like a little happy face like that, just like a very shallow happy face. And that works great. And so I'm gonna start adding these. Like I said, I'll have about 5 of my bigger trees here. You can have more, you can have less, put them wherever you want. If there's a tree that you don't like from your background trees, you can purposefully, you know, make one of these bigger ones, run into it a little more and cover it up some. So that's the nice thing about the layering process though. You can use it to your advantage. So if you're having any issues like that, don't be afraid to cover a little part of it up. I'm gonna have one, this will be these 2 trees that go even further. This next one will be like my biggest tree. He can fill in a pretty good amount of that empty space in between these 2. I'll have him even lower here. This is gonna be a nice thick guy. He's a real strong tree. He's been growing for years. He is the leader of the pack. So I'm gonna give him a nice big trunk down here. And honestly, the bigger your trunk is, the easier it gets to add those textures in there. I'll tell you, like I was telling you earlier, I paint murals, and I think one of them, it's like 13-foot ceilings or something. I had to be on a ladder painting these aspen trees. But the bigger they are, it was easier to get all those details because they're so big, you know. So, you know, don't be afraid of that. My wife also paints murals with me, and she feels the same way. You know, going big, you can really get a lot of details in there. So don't be afraid to let these trees be nice and big. Nothing wrong with that. And again, make sure you got lots of paint on there, nice and saucy. Nice and saucy. Shouldn't have to press down hard. Now, as you go, you can decide if you want to do all the trees first like we did last time, or if you want to add the texture and the black texture as you go. You can kind of do it either way. I'm going to go ahead and just put my trees on there, and then I'll add my texture. But either way honestly works because, you know, I was rehydrating those trees last time. So if you had a problem with that and they were drying too fast, you could add your black in as you go. But that's the cool thing about painting. There's always several different ways or routes to get to the same destination. You don't have to do it the same way. If you come to our, once we open up our public classes again, if you've ever been to them, you probably had a couple different instructors. Each one is going to do it a little different, you know, and we all break down a painting in a slightly different way, which is cool. So don't be afraid of that. Once you get to your final maybe 3 trees over here, aspen trees actually sometimes grow together at the bottom. Sometimes they're like fused together. So don't be afraid if that happens a little bit with some of these. You can do that. It's kind of a cool little effect. And again, I'm kind of staggering mine in between a lot of my other trees here and letting them just run together a little bit. And you don't have to do 5. You could do 3. You know, it's up to you. It's really up to you. Feel what feels comfortable. You know, if you're like, I got 3 trees, I don't think I can fit anymore, then don't even worry about it. That's perfect. If you run out of your purple, don't be afraid to mix a little more, and don't worry if it's exactly the same. It's good to have lots of flavor. Flav your canvas. Don't worry about that. Remember, some of these other ones are going to run and overlap some of those background ones. It's up to you how much you want that to happen. I'm going to have 2 trees over here that kind of run together a little bit at the bottom. That'll be kind of fun. By the way, if you love aspen trees as much as I do, don't ever cut one down, because they're actually, if you didn't know this, all of their roots are connected. They actually talk to each other. Isn't that weird? Some fun tree facts. Trees talk through their roots. They like send signals to each other, which is interesting. But aspen trees are especially connected by the roots there. So if you cut one down, you'll see like a cluster of them all die. So interesting stuff. They're very connected. Fun stuff about trees. Did you know trees talk to each other? Isn't that weird? What are they talking about? Look it up online though. There's lots of interesting stuff about trees. I will tell you that. All right. It's up to you how many you want. Like I said, you don't have to put as many as me. I might try to squeeze one more in there just so I have a nice full forest. But that is just up to your personal preference there on how many of those guys you want. Doesn't hurt to have little gaps. But generally speaking, you do want these trees a little bit bigger, just a little bit maybe. Or at least further down on the canvas. Make sure they're coming a little further down so that gives it that cool sense of depth there. I might even bring some of these down even a little further. Nothing wrong with that. Just gives my canvas lots of depth. Having all those trees kind of in a slightly different spot there. Now, once you've got your trunks, start adding that texture on the same way you did before. Blobs, little happy faces, just pure black paint. For this time, I'll just wipe off my brush really good. I'm not even gonna clean it. Keep it a dirty brush if you want, or you can rinse it, that's up to you. I'm just gonna wipe it off good. Napkin, table, or neighbor. I'm gonna be loading up with black next, and I'm gonna start adding in all my cool little black textures on there. And then once we got that, we'll highlight it and start getting into our final touches. The trees always, take the longest. Once we got those trees, everything else just starts falling into place. So that's what's gonna happen next there. So I'll start adding my textures in. And for these textures, I would even encourage you to spread them out even a little bit more, since these trees are a little closer to us. And just lift off with your brush as you go. The weirder you can make these textures, the better. Remember, when you lift off with the brush, it naturally frays on you, and that helps a lot. So let that happen. Nothing needs to be dry for this. The more you brush it, the more your purple and black are gonna mix and blend together. The less you brush it, the more you'll get those kind of streaky tones there. So the less you brush it, the better. You don't want to keep going over these. They're supposed to be pretty bold. So it's all about implying things when you're painting. It's all about implying things. Since we're doing the bigger trees here too, like I said, you could even carve your initials into one of them if you want with your little brush. We have a tree painting like this where they're even a little closer, and it's called Graffiti Aspens. It's another awesome aspen tree painting we do up here. But that one, we purposefully put cool little like graffiti stuff in it, like little happy faces, little initials, little hearts with like an arrow going through it, fun stuff like that. Remember, this is your painting at the end of the class, so be as creative as you want. If you decide you want to put Bigfoot hiding behind a tree, you can do that, all right? I will not stop you. Blobs, happy faces, leave little gaps. Some of them can just be quick little lines. Remember, gaps are not a bad thing. We're going to fill some of those gaps with highlights and other stuff. Some textures come from the right, some come from the left. Don't make a pattern. Remember, that's number one. Don't make a pattern, which can be tricky sometimes. So if you catch yourself making a pattern, just come back and mess up a spot a little more so it doesn't look the same as the area you're worried it's copying there. Odd numbers also help to make things feel more random. So you can kind of think of odd numbers when you make these little textures. Like you could do a little cluster of 5 little textures, or 1 little texture, or a little 3, And sometimes that helps too. And again, the spacing. Notice the spacing in between your textures. Sometimes it could be further, sometimes they're closer together. But keep it messy, keep it loose, keep it loose. More messy, more better. You got this, Twisters. Woo! Just making sure we're all still awake there. Remember, you can play around too with using your big brush or your smaller brush for a lot of these textures. So don't be afraid to, go back and forth as needed there. We'll spend a few more minutes here, and then we will add another highlight into these trees before we get into our final steps. It's about, it's about 7:47. I'm assuming we might need a little extra time tonight, but honestly, there's not a lot left on our painting after we've got our tree textures there. Not a lot left after this. Just highlights and lots of fun blobs. And there are actually a few branches at the bottom growing out of our bushes down there. So we'll get into that a little bit. Those are really fun to make. I'm gonna bring my canvas a little closer again. I just want you to notice how weird those textures are. Really close. If you see my brush strokes up close, you can see they're so funky. So funky. All the way there. Funky, funky. Nothing perfect. Textures, blobs, happy faces. Shallow happy faces. The weirder, the better. And like I said, that's sometimes the hardest thing, is just being weird. But art encourages it. That's why I love it. Again, keep breathing while you're making your little tree textures. Don't pass out on me. Keep your oxygen flowing. Just let it flow, let it go. We're just getting lost in the smushing process tonight. That's what it's all about. There's no wrong way to art it. We're all going to art it our own unique way. And even just a good example too, I actually painted this other example, but they're not going to be exactly the same. That's okay. They'll all be a little different. Now, like we did with our other trees, and I wouldn't do a lot of this, honestly, but if you want to, I don't really see much on the example one, but you know, it's optional. If you wanted to, if any of your trees, this is really just if your trees are a little too overlappy and you don't see a separation, you can add a little hint of a line on the edge of your tree, just a little bit where they kind of overlap there. If you need to, you can give them a little deeper shadow on either side. I wouldn't do a lot of this, but if you want to, you can do a lot. You know, that's up to you. It especially looks good if they come off of one of those textures that's already touching, you know. But just where my trees are running together, sometimes a little line along the edge of the tree there can separate a little bit. You don't want it to feel like an outline though. You want it to be, you know, just texture. So that's just a little something. I wouldn't do a lot of that. Like I just did a little over here. I didn't even bother with the trees over here with a little line on the side though. But you know, if you need it, feel free to add it. And then finally, before we get into the last phase, it's going to be adding a white highlight. And we want to be really, really bright with that white highlight. So that's where we want to really rinse off our brush. It's been a dirty brush. Get it clean. So paint little circles on the bottom of that cup. Make a little whirlpool and then tap it off there. And wipe it on that paper towel. And we'll get pure white for this. This time we're not mixing anything, just white. Lots of white on there. And for this, it's just like we were doing before. You're going to focus it on, actually you could do either side of the tree, and I'll even say it this way. Let's pretend the sunlight is coming from the middle. So my trees on the left, I'll make them a little brighter on the right side. And then the trees over here, I'll make them brighter on the opposite. So it really can go anywhere and in between your black areas. But my trees on the left, let's pretend the sunlight is in the middle. So that sunlight's casting light on the right side of my trees on the left and the left side of my trees on the right. If that's not confusing. I know that's weird. But just think about, pretend there's the sunlight's coming from the middle of your canvas and just think about which side of the tree is facing that. And that's the side you want a little more white. But you can put white on either side, honestly. But this white will really give those a really nice pop, a really nice shine. They give it that little something it needs, you know? A little more, So that's what we want next. I love highlights. Those highlights are gonna make a huge difference on that tree. And I'm already getting some on my big tree here. I'll show you up close so you can see it better. I know it's got a little glare happening, so let me show you up close. So there's those white highlights. I've only put them on this tree right here, just this one. But you see the white going in between the black, and it's adding this really nice pop. So that's the idea there, really bright. Doesn't need to blend. No blending, just bold brush strokes. This is all for those new trees. Remember, think about which side is facing the light source, but really anywhere looks good. And this is kind of adding that brightness back because, you know, these trees are white, so don't be afraid to have a lot of white. This is kind of a fun way to do it. We actually started, started light, then we got to the dark, and then we added more light back in. So it's kind of fun. Way to play that game. And you can overlap your black with this white. You might get a little hints of gray in there, and that's okay. If it starts, you know, changing the color of your brush too much and you're not getting that pure white anymore, well, then you might want to go ahead and rinse the brush and get some pure white again. Okay, so now I've got highlights on my trees on the left. Now I'm going to these on the right, and I'm putting the highlight on the left side of these because, again, the middle of the canvas I'm pretending is where the sunlight is all coming from there. Nice little highlights, just like you did the black. The highlights can be just fun little sweeping lines, some longer, some shorter. They don't have to go across the whole thing there, and it's really about texture again, all about that texture. But you can see how much adding the white is going to help separate these trees also from our background trees. And again, give it that cool little bit of depth there, really pushing our perspective of everything, all that good stuff. So that's all we're doing there. This again also just separates the trees a little better. More messy, more better. Got this. I'm gonna check the chat. Let me know if you have questions as we're going here. The paint doctor won't leave you hanging. I got you. And I've got all my white on there. I'm gonna show you up close now. Now you can see the separation in the trees. You can see I've got my silhouetted ones now. And now it's all making sense, right? There we go. So nice and bright. All right. Cool, cool, cool. After this, we're gonna add a few little branches and then add some leaves to the bottom. Now, again, I do apologize. We are gonna run over on class time just a little bit tonight, but we're all at home, so it's all good, right? But, you know, if you got some plans going on there, no worries. Like I said, we're gonna upload this video to YouTube. That way, if you missed a step, you need to revisit a step, anything like that, you can come back and rewatch the whole class again. It will only be up for like a couple of days and then they delete it. That way, you know, these classes are really exclusive to y'all. So it's just a fun little tool there in case you need it. So a few more minutes there. I'm gonna show you those branches in just a sec. Let me know if you have questions on those tree textures. Otherwise, you got this. I believe in you. Just be one with the brush. One with the tree. Remember, you are that tree right now. You are that brush. It is just an extension of your hand. It is your hand. So, while we're getting those final little touches, I'll go ahead and show you the branches. There's little branches. This is fun. The rest of the painting is going to be a few branches and then just blobs. Love the blobs. So fun. So, notice... I'm gonna hold this one up. Look at those little branches coming up at the base of our trees there. That's what we're gonna add next. Those are really fun. They're gonna, you know, push, again, the perspective because every time you overlap something, it gives your painting more depth and it makes it feel like things are going further into the distance. So we're gonna overlap branches around the bases of our trees and then we're gonna have bushes on top of that. So that's gonna be really fun. It's gonna be a lot of texture, a lot of texture. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you those branches real quick, and then we'll start playing around with that. Now, I'll use my little demo canvas again here to show you what to do, and then I'll show you in the real one. This one's getting real funky over here. All right, so for your branches, I use the same kind of tip as trees. No straight lines. You don't want straight lines. If you have straight lines in those little baby branches, they're like little baby trees starting to sprout. It's just not gonna look right. It's gonna look like a chicken foot is what I call it. So if you don't want a little chicken foot branch, then don't do this. This is what it looks like if you make all those perfectly straight lines. It's like, wah, 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 wah. You gotta make that sound effect. But look at that, it's so stiff. You don't want that. So we got to wiggle a lot. So we're going to use our little brush for this, and just black, just pure black. And here's my tip. I would take some of your black paint, move it over, make a new little puddle, kind of take a little, scoot it over there, and then dunk your brush in some water and from your water cup and add a drop of water into your black and stir that in. And this is really especially if your paint's a little thick. This helps thin it out. Black's always a thick color. And we want to use our little brush for this. Little mama, little mama. So I'm going to take my littlest brush. I'm lightly diluting some black. You can dilute the paint anytime it's feeling too thick. You don't want a lot of water, just a little bit, but it helps a lot. It makes it more like a marker, a Sharpie, liquid eyeliner. You get the idea. And then when you load the brush, this is so important. To keep little mama from having a bad hair day, you want to lay down the brush in that paint and just spin the brush a little bit. Roll it, roll it, roll it. That'll reshape your brush and keep little mama from having that bad hair day. So here's how I make those little branches. They're really fun. Think of them as like wobbly letter Ys. They're going to start at the base of our trees, but this is how they go. You just start with a wobbly line, whoop, lift off. Once you got your wobbly line, you come back to that line. It can get a little thicker like your trees at the bottom if you want. But you go back to this line, think of it as your highway, and then you branch off that highway, make little exit ramps, and you lift off each time. You pull the brush away from the canvas, and they're like wobbly letter Ys. And that's all it is. It's like a couple series of wobbly letter Ys. And you don't have to have this if you don't want it. It's a very subtle little element, but it's fun to add. So that's going to be just at the base of our big trees. And I'm only going to have like 4 of these. You can have more if you want. I'm just going to have like 4 of these little branchy areas down here. So I've watered down my black just a tiny bit, rolling my brush in the paint there to give it that nice hair day. And I'm just going to start down here adding fun little branches. So you can start them in the purple area, and then you wiggle up. You want to make sure you're overlapping your trunks. But lift off as you go. Lift off as you go. And make some fun little branches like that. They don't have to be much. I'm going to get a little closer as I'm doing these details. So hopefully you can see that a little better. Let's scoosh that down a little bit. Here we go. Since we're getting into the little bitty stuff, I'll get a little closer. So these little branches down here, however many you want. You start a little below your tree trunk, make a wiggly line. Once you got your wiggly line, use that as your 4-lane highway. And every time you add a branch, you got to start inside this line and then exit out and lift off. Pull the brush away from the canvas. The more you pull it away, the more you get those nice little thin brush strokes happening in there. And just like our trees there, we got to be kind of random with these. So you can have as many little branches or as few as you'd like. That's up to you. Fun little branches. We're going to cover up the base of these, so don't worry about the base too much. And kind of play. Some of them can have more lean, like this guy over here. I'm going to give him a little more lean. He's like drooping a little bit. Nothing wrong with that. Lift off as you go there. It's up to you how many you want. Just wobbly letter Ys. Just wobbly letter. Shake it while you make it. You got this. You got this. So like I said, I have about 4 of them. You can have more, you can have less. That's really up to you. Some of them can have multiple, pieces on them. You can have a couple branches if you want. That's really up to you. This is just kind of like fun, little playful stuff to add just to give it a little more depth, but we're going to cover up these little branches quite a bit. They're going to get very, very covered up with all of our funky little leaves falling everywhere. Let me have questions on your little baby branches there. Little baby branches. Lots of movement there. Let them dance in the wind a little bit. That's what they want to do. Dance in the wind. And hey, if you don't like one of them, remember, we're going to cover them up with our leaves. So that's the beauty of it. Don't worry. Don't even worry. There we go. There we go. All right. So finale, we have leaves to add, and that's it. We're gonna have leaves falling from the top, and we're gonna have more purple leaves at the bottom. So this last step is one where you can finger paint. Really fun. I love finger painting. Or you can use your brush and do a lot of blobbing. You might want to use the medium brush. If you have a round medium one, that's fantastic. Flat one also works fantastic. So either way, either way. And the first texture I'm going to do is actually going to be black. We don't want a lot of black. We don't want a lot, just some. So what I'm going to do is go to my medium round brush there, or finger paint. I'll do both. And I'm going to come down here and I'm going to start blobbing black little clusters. And you want them to just be kind of random and spread out. They look really good at the base of your trees especially, but really anywhere. They go a little bit behind your tree. They can run into your tree a little bit. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We want to get random little clusters of these darker areas, especially at the bottom, but really space them out. Make them very funky. Don't have to have a lot of this, just a little bit. Mostly at the base. Just black. Just pure black here. Just a little here and there. It's gonna intensify that contrast or shadows basically in our painting here. I'm gonna put a little bit just around some of the base of some of these trees. And this is one of those times when you can let your brush run out of paint, or if you're finger painting, you don't have to have as much on there. I'll do a little finger painting as well. You just kind of lightly tap in a circular motion. And again, try to let your brush or your fingers run out of paint so that it gives you a little more texture. Nothing too perfect here. And we don't want this black paint too goopy. We want it to dry a little faster. So it's good if you just kind of use it a little more sparse, more spread out, and just kind of let your brush run out of paint. Run out of paint. That's going to really darken the shadow on our tree trunks at the base there a little bit. And our foliage, just giving that foliage a little more depth. But see, it's real spread out, real spread out. Any questions there? Let me know. Let me know. I won't leave you hanging. Paint doctors here. No insurance, no copay needed, all right? Sweet. All right. We are just moving and grooving now. Just moving along. All right, y'all. Again, if you have questions, if you have a little uh-oh moment, a little happy accident, let me know. I can always give you little tips and tricks. The cool thing about acrylic paint is it dries really fast. So if you ever have a little uh-oh moment, if you have a hair dryer, you can dry it in like 30 seconds and then bam, you can paint over literally any color, even black paint. That's what's so amazing about acrylic paint. It's one of the most forgiving mediums in art. So like I said, if you have a little happy accident anytime you want, you can always dry it and paint over anything, even black paint. It's pretty amazing. Sometimes with black paint, you have to do like a little coat of white first and then go over that, but it works really well. So finally, let's get the last little blobbies on there. So we want to get some dark purples next. So for dark purple, I'll rinse off my brush and we will switch to using blue and red here. I'm gonna use a little more blue than red. So get a big scoop of blue and a medium scoop of red and make a really dark, kind of a blue purple. Really dark this time. And like I said, more blue than red. We're not gonna have any white. No white yet. No white. So I'm gonna take my really dark blue purple, again about 2 scoops of blue and 1 scoop of your red there. Make a nice deep, deep purple. And then we'll start blobbing again. We're gonna blob down here with dark purple and same thing, spread these dots out, little clusters, little clusters. If you notice how I'm holding my brush here, by the way, I'm holding it sideways. I'm not stabbing the canvas. I'm actually holding it slanted when I'm putting these blobs. You get thicker blobs that way. That's why I finger paint sometimes, because you get thicker blobs. So with these blobs, I want you to start overlapping a little bit of some of your tree branches, just a little bit, and maybe a little bit of some of those tree trunks. But space them out. We don't want to cover up everything. Space them out. And some of these can creep up a little higher if you want, just like we did at the beginning there, but keep them mostly in the purple areas. Just dark purple here and there, just here and there, wherever you want it. It lives wherever you say it lives. You are the creator of this land. So you put those leaves wherever you want them to live. This is your magical forest. You make the rules. That's why I love art. You can do what you want. It's beautiful. So I've got black down here. I've got dark purple down here. Now we need to get a few more flavors. We're just flavor-flaving that canvas. Lots of purple down here, lots of flavor. So the next flavor I want to get is just going to be a slightly lighter purple here. So all I'm going to do is get a big scoop, add it to that purple I was just using, and really brighten it up a bit. Brighten it up nice and bright. So that dark purple I was just using, I put a big old scoop of white in there. And now I've got a nice bright purple there. I'm going to start taking my bright purple and doing the same thing. Now, again, space it out. And this time you want to cluster dots a little bit around some of your branches. We're going to have a few more colors. So don't do all the branches, just a couple here and there. And you can see this bright color is going to really pop against all these darker tones there. Really nice. Love those light purples in there. The light purples are going to pick up some of the other colors. That's okay. If it starts picking up some black and turning too gray, it's okay if it's a little gray. But if it's like turning only gray and you don't see purple, then, you know, rinse the brush, get some fresh purple. But since we're just blobbing and we're not blending here, we shouldn't pick up too much. You might pick up a little bit. So there we go. And you can see I'm really spacing those dots out. They're really spread out quite a bit. Little clusters, little groups of dots here and there, just wherever you're feeling it. This is where it helps to take a little step back every once in a while, or a little picture on your phone, you know. And then from there, we can add what I call like, kind of like a purpley pink, or like a plum. That's the word I was looking for, like a plum purple. So there's about 2 more shades down here. I'm gonna show you the example one again. And you can see some of those more reddish, kind of plum looking, almost pink purples in there. That's the last 2 colors. So basically what we're gonna do is mix a plum purple. We'll do some blobs with that, and then we'll add more white to it, just like we just did. So we did the black, we did the dark purple, added a big scoop of white, did some light purple. Now I'm gonna rinse off my brush or wipe it off. I'm gonna get 2 scoops of red and a little scoop of blue in there, just a little bit. So this time 2 scoops of red and a little bit of blue and a little bit of white, just a little bit. So again, 2 big scoops of red, little scoop of blue, little scoop of white. You should get kind of like a, like I said, like a plum purple. It's like a very reddish purple. It should still stay kind of purple, but say a little bit more red than blue, you know? That makes sense. Here's what mine looks like. This color right here. It's kind of a plum, almost a wine color. And then I'll start adding this one. This one's gonna really pop, you know, because it's getting a little warmer. It's a slightly different tone than what we've been using. So I'm gonna cluster this one also around the ends of those little baby branches, and just random, wherever I've got a little extra space, you know, I'll be blobbing in some of this color. Definitely overlap some trunks here and there at the base. It's always a fun thing to do. And definitely get some of these on the ends of those little baby branches. You want those little baby trees to have little afros, just little afros. Like another painter we all know of who makes happy little trees. You want your little trees to have happy little afros, you know? So there you go. And then once I've got this kind of plum red, I will add a big scoop of white to it and make a more pinkish tone. And that's the last color I'm gonna use down here. And then we'll add a little more yellow up top. But I'm gonna add a big scoop of white. It almost makes like a bubblegum color there. It's almost like bubblegum pink, but it's still got a hint of that purple. This color is gonna pop really good. Let me get a little closer, y'all see that pink. And again, around the ends of the branches and just anywhere you want a little pop of color, little clusters. These look fantastic, these bright colors in there. They really give it some nice contrast against everything else going on. Just kind of gives it that nice vibrancy, that little something it needs, that little So get those nice bright colors in there. However much pink you want. And you can see as we've layered these little clusters, it's given the bottom of that painting this really full forest effect there. Our forest is healthy, It's got so much texture. This painting's all about texture. It really is. So I'll show you this up close. I want you to see how messy this is up close. It's like a party on a canvas. It's confetti just falling all over the place. Make it rain, make it rain. But see, as I get further and further back there, you get to see the full effect. Up close, you're sometimes like, wow, that's really messy. You know, you see mine up close, it looks like a hot mess. You take mine, you move it back a little bit, and you're like, oh, I see what's all happening. That's the idea with painting. You're always implying things. That's why I love it. You can imply so much with so little. It's fantastic. Finally, the last color, we were asking about this earlier, is the yellow at the top. The yellow, we need that golden yellow falling on top of our tree trunks. This really pulls them into that forest, and that way they don't feel like they're kind of going off the page at the top there. So that's going to be the final step there to really bring it all together. I'll show you again on this example, those golden yellows following. Now notice the golden yellows here, they are overlapping just like we did with the other colors, the tops of the tree trunks, and then they spread out. They spread out. But you got to be careful. You don't want your yellows to mix with your purples. So the yellows are going to stay in the yellowy areas, and you don't want them to come too far down into the purples because they'll turn a muddy, funky poo color you don't want. All right? So don't do that. Don't do that. So the last color, again, we'll blob it. You can use your flat or medium round brush there. Either medium brush works great. And to make this last color, definitely rinse your brush good. It's been a dirty brush. We got to get it nice and clean there. Get those purples off of there. It's okay if your paint water looks like my paint water. Mine's kind of like a muddy, it's like a, you can see here, I don't want to pour paint on the computer, but it's like a muddy purple. That's okay. As long as you rinse the brush really good, it won't affect your other colors there. And tap it dry. So the last color mixture is going to be a big scoop of yellow, and then a scoop of that peanut butter yellow. And we're going to mix those two together. So, again, a big scoop of bright yellow and a big scoop of peanut butter yellow. Now, if you didn't have the peanut butter color, remember you can make a nacho cheese yellow. So what does that mean? It just means you're going to mix yellow with a tiny bit of red. You don't want it to be orange. You want it to be nacho cheese yellow. You know what I'm saying? So it's like a very pale, it's like a very pale orange almost, or just like yellow with a hint of orange in it. So if you don't have that peanut butter, yellow with a tiny bit of red. Otherwise, 1 scoop of yellow, 1 scoop of peanut butter, mix them up, and that's all you need. No white this time. And it's gonna make this really golden yellow. It's a beautiful color. Love that color. So we'll take that golden yellow, that golden mustard yellow there, and we'll start blobbing away. Just blobbing it like it's hot here. Starting at the top, and then spreading them out. And you know what? My yellow, let's see. My yellow is not super, it's not popping next to that background as much as I'd like. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add a hint of red, just a hint to it. Mostly so y'all can see it better. But if yours is not contrasting enough against your background, you can add a little hint of yellow, of red in there. And this will make it a little more orangey and golden. And again, they're real clustered at the top, and then they spread out as you fall down. Just feel those leaves just falling off of those trees there. Let them overlap your trunks every once in a while, and don't touch the yellow too much. Don't touch the purple too much if it's wet. If the purple's dry, you can overlap it a little bit. This is gonna be the final little touch to really pull those trees in and make them feel like they're part of that forest. We can cover up the tops, and it's okay. You're gonna see some of the tree colors show through your yellows. If that bothers you, you can thicken yellow with a little white, but it's not a bad thing because it just gives it that cool transparent feel. It feels like the leaves are moving, and there's nothing wrong with that. You can see sometimes when you're looking at trees, you know, the branches in between the leaves. That's the effect there. So, and then I'm just blobbing and blobbing. Blob it like you mean it. Blob it like you mean it. These fall down as far as you want, but try not to touch the purple. But do overlap your tree trunks. And I'll show you that a little closer. There we go. Now you can see my yellows. See how they're all clustered at the top there. There's quite a bit of texture. And then they're just trickling down, just slowly falling down. Little confetti. Making it rain, making it rain. Once you've got your yellows falling down from the top there, that is the very last step on our painting tonight. So once you are done, give yourselves a hand for successfully completing a painting. Woo! Give yourselves a hand, twisters. And honestly, the very last touch, if you want to, is to sign those beauties to make it official. You want to claim that painting after all that hard work? That way no one can steal it from you. Say, this is my painting, I did this. So if you want to sign it, I usually initial it. You can sign it wherever you want. I usually sign the corner down here, and I use like a purple, but you can use whatever color you want. It just depends on how much you want to show up or not show up. You can kind of hide it if you want, or you can make it a little more bold. I'm going to use like a light purple for mine, so I'm going to use my initials here, a little TD for Tyler the Paint Doctor. Actually, my last name does start with a D, so that just works out very conveniently for me. And again, if you want to see my art, Tyler Dixon Murals. I typed it in the chat there. You can find my art on Instagram, Facebook, that kind of thing. And we're going to be doing more of these virtual classes coming up. So if you enjoyed this, please give me a little shout out on Facebook or Google. Let me know how the Paint Doctor did tonight. Otherwise, my name is Bert, and I wasn't here at all, okay? But we're going to be doing more of these. I'm going to be the exclusive virtual artist, so I'm really excited about that. Yeah. So we'll have a good time there. So I hope to see you in my next class. I'm going to hang out for just a few more minutes here. I know we went a little over on the class time there. If you have questions, go ahead and leave them for me in that chat. I'll hang out for just a few more here. That way I can help you out. And I would love to see your paintings. So if you want to take pictures, post them for us. You can even hold up to your camera if you want, but post them for us. And oh, that looks great, Peggy. Nice. That's beautiful. I'd love to see them. Yeah, and like I said, if you post them, we can repost them on our page and give you a little shout out and all that kind of cool, fun stuff. And again, if you're looking for us, Twist Colorado Springs, we are the East Colorado Springs studio, Colorado Springs East, North Powers Boulevard. If you're looking for us, okay. And if you need paint supplies, remember we have take-it-home kits. And the cool thing is you can get a take-it-home kit to go with the virtual class. So either way, if you've got your own supplies at home, it's only, I think, $15 for the virtual class. If you don't have your supplies, you can pay to get the supplies added in there. And it's just like paying for a regular class. So it's pretty sweet. And like I said, you get brushes, you get paints, you get a surface to paint on, you get a paper towel, paint palettes, and I think that's everything. There might be something else I'm forgetting, but I think that's pretty much most of the stuff. Oh, and if you need an easel, we now have these new cardboard easels that are only $2. And they're really cool. They just pop up, and you've got a sweet little pop-up easel. They fold really conveniently, so they're easy to store. So if you do need a little pop-up easel, we have some for $2. So definitely check that out. But otherwise, thank you all so much for painting with me tonight. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate y'all coming and painting with me. I had a fantastic time. Thank you so much, y'all. I hope y'all had as good time as I did. Thank you for painting with the Paint Doctor tonight. Y'all have a wonderful evening, and if you need some, like I said, I'll hang out for one more minute here. Give me a little comment in the chat there. Otherwise, that'll be it for us tonight, y'all. But like I said, come to our next class. Actually, you know what? Oh, thank you. I'm so glad you enjoyed it. I'll show you real quick before I go the next virtual class we're going to do. I actually have the painting. Oh, yeah. Oh, where can you find the video to rewatch it? We have a YouTube channel, and let's see. You had a blast. Thank you. Yes. Oh, thank you. My wife is gorgeous. I am a lucky man. She is so beautiful and so sweet too. Yes, we're going to have all of these on or temporarily on the YouTube. It might take a day to upload it to the YouTube channel, but I'll make sure we post about it once it's up there. But we have a YouTube channel and all that good stuff. Let's see. I see some more comments here. Yes. Thank y'all for spending your Saturday with me, everyone. Y'all were awesome. Ours look horrible, but the fun was worth it. You did an awesome job. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Hey, don't worry. You know, we're always, as an artist, hard on ourselves the most. And to be honest, usually when you finish a painting, take a step back from it. The next day, after not looking at it for 2 hours, the next day you look at it and you're like, oh, wow, I did a good job. Usually, you know, you're a little hard on yourself the first round, but then you see it the next day and you go, dang, I did pretty good. I'm pretty proud of myself. So hey, you know, don't be too hard on yourself. And just know, the more you paint, the easier it gets, you know. So, but it's all about that fun, so I'm glad to hear y'all had a good time tonight. Can you do one more close-up, please? Yes, absolutely, of the canvas here. So, let me do a little close-up. Let's see here. Here, I'm gonna go real close. There's the top. You can see it's very textured. There's my leaves falling down. And then as we go up here, you can see the little colors at the bottom there. There's tons of those purples and pinks and then the branches and all that good stuff. So, but you can see how messy it is up close. It's very messy. There's a lot of texture in there. A lot of texture. Absolutely. Hope that helps. There you go. And then I'll be right back. I'm gonna show you all the next class we're gonna do real quick. Oh yeah, this is the next one I will be teaching. Love this painting, so beautiful, so much fun. So if you want to paint some Colorado mountains with me, I think this one's called Colorado Reflections actually. It is a beautiful painting. This is coming up, I believe, next Saturday, but don't quote me on that, check our calendar out. But that will be our next virtual class, and if you need supplies, like I said, we got you. I'm really excited about that one. That one's gonna be sweet. All right. Well, that's all for tonight, y'all. I'm gonna head out, but thank y'all so much for painting with me again. Y'all were a blast, and please give me a little shout out on Facebook or anything, or send me your paintings, and I will shout out you. So thank you so much, y'all. You were fantastic. I hope to see you in my next class. Otherwise, y'all have a fantastic night, everybody, and thanks for twisting at home with us. See you later, my friends.